And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
All right, attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time for me, 5:05 Pacific. It's dark outside. It's cold, man. I tell you what, I'm up in Yosemite Park. It's cold. The elevation's about 4,000 feet where I'm at, and literally as I'm driving up these mountains, it's going. We'll go from wearing a t-shirt and all of a sudden it's snowing. I'm like, oh, here we go. Tom Joyce, good morning, brother. Here we go. Shout out, coffee and donuts, $20. Start off the day right. Here we go. Good morning, all. My last 20 balloons until the first. The Duchess made me pick between Finest Unfiltered or bring a trailer. Let's talk about those trailers. This is more affordable for us on a fixed income. Yeah, absolutely. And listen, good morning, everybody. Want to give a shout out. We got our new family member, Jack, behind the scenes, going to be helping us out with production to the Finest Unfiltered family. So I see Toka Plaza. Shout out to my shirt here, Highland Park. I love it. It's got a, aviation picture. So, John, good morning. What's up?
What's up, brother? Yeah, we're going to have, if you guys don't follow Hakim Gibson, he's the man behind the handle, Perception of Law Enforcement. He's loved, he's hated in the NYPD. It's, I've been following Hakim for a while. I've been following Perception of Law Enforcement page for a while. I think the service that Hakim provides to the men and women in the New York City Police Department is invaluable. While I was never a fan of cops being on the internet, at a time when morale's so low in the NYPD, Hakim takes great pictures. Some the shading, sometimes they're black and white. However he does it, he has a very unique talent of capturing both the men and women in the NYPD and painting them in a good light, regardless of their physical stature, their appearances. And then he often quotes it with a Bible verse, or he'll put a Bible. And I honestly think it's a morale booster. I think a lot of people like to see themselves up there, and I honestly don't understand. Well, I do understand it because it happens to us, but it annoys me to watch how many people on the NYPD have big mouths from behind fake handles and fake pictures. Like, if you have an issue, just be a man about it. Say what it is. Give your opinion. This is America. Nobody's going to bite you. We're all adults here.
The NYPD is full of nice guys and full of tough guys. Of course, when they're behind a fake moniker. But I think what Hakim does is pretty impressive. I know, personally, I actually made Hakim's page. I had no idea he had captured a picture of me. I was in Times Square, as a lieutenant when I was in uniform. So I think what he does, I think it's a pretty cool service. I think that cops like to see it. Other cops like to say, hey, I saw a picture you working in Times Square. I saw a picture you in another spot. I think the beauty of the picture is he's capturing the cops in a good light, because that's why I like it, right? Unfortunately, for the most part, anytime cops are getting any form of celebrityness or publicity, it's usually negative. So when it comes to Hakim, if he's putting pictures out there, it's something positive, right? We're talking about positivity on here, John. So it's positive. So I think it's pretty cool.
No, yeah, I totally, I love it. I think the knock that I've been getting, oh, he's a buff. People call anyone that surrounds themselves that aren't members of the NYPD, that like cops or like to hang around cops, they call them buffs. That originates, the word buff, it originates from the early 1900s, prior to Theodore Roosevelt, and I think during Theodore Roosevelt's administration as the police commissioner in the end, before the NYPD was even formed. I think it was before even the boroughs formed. What buffs were, but what the cops would call buffs is, so cops would go their post and then they would go hide out. Either they would be in houses of prostitution or bars. And, Theodore Roosevelt and other police commissioners had started like these shoe fly processes. And shoe fly would go out and it would be like a captain that would go out to try to find where the cops are, right? Because they were everywhere where they shouldn't be. And so people in the neighborhood who liked the cop were called buffs, and they would warn the cop, like, yo, your captain's coming down the block. And boom, he would get out there. So that's where the word buff originated from. But today, we kind of say anybody that's friendly with law enforcement, oh, he's a buff. I don't see anything wrong with buffs. I don't.
It's funny, right? We heard that terminology for a long time, right? Buff. It's kind of like when it comes to NYPD, it's kind of like a derogatory thing, like a negative thing. Oh, you're a buff, right? Or like someone who's too much into police work, or someone. A lot of times, what's considered a buff, right, is someone that couldn't get into law enforcement and is so into law enforcement that they call them a buff. You know, it's funny how it's a negative thing, but I'm excited to have Hakim out here. You know, there's a lot of controversy going on with him. I got a lot of phone calls. I'm sure you did, John. Same thing about Hakim. Some people love him. Some people think he's an EDP. There's a lot of, I think he's been judged and prejudged by a controversial incident, which we'll get into, about an arrest. So I would love to hear Hakim's side of the story. And that's why I told people, let's not prejudge it. Allow the interview to play out. Let's get to know Hakim. Let's hear his side of the story. Stop getting information by third person and allow this to play out. And that's the one thing I can't. It was always like I was always perturbed by when it came to cops is they get their information by third person. Why don't you read it yourself? Look into it yourself so you can find out. Because a lot of times, you know what? Things are not as they appear or not as they seem.
Yeah, so Hakim had a concealed carry permit. Hakim often goes to tragic events or large details where your unions aren't even at, and he goes out on his own without any protection, without being paid any money, and he goes out and he takes pictures of cops. And I think he does a great job. So he went to a funeral that was a tragic incident, Jonathan Diller's funeral. Jonathan Diller was murdered while serving New York City on the police department. He was murdered approaching two perpetrators. He was murdered basically for wearing a uniform. Hakim went there. Hakim had his firearm on him that he was legally allowed to carry. He had it concealed. And Hakim was arrested by a police officer, an MTA police officer, not an NYPD police officer, for being in a sensitive location, which in my opinion wasn't, and he wasn't even in a sensitive location. So, you know, we went, I did a podcast a while back about how you know, having a concealed carry in New York is like basically not having a license, because there's so many things that you can't, where you can't actually carry a firearm, and they consider a sensitive location a place that you're not allowed as a licensed firearm concealed carry holder, you're not allowed to go. So obviously I could see that the church may have been considered a sensitive location, as it wasn't open to the public. It was surrounded by guards. But even in that scenario, there needs to be signage saying that this is a sensitive location. So Hakim was carrying his firearm legally on the streets. A police officer that works for the MTA that he knew saw the bulge of the firearm, did not see the firearm. So just because he saw the bulge does not mean that it's exposed. He saw the bulge because I believe Hakim was wearing a medium suit that day, and he placed Hakim under arrest, which I you know, we'll get into all that with him, but I think a lot of people take issue with it. He broke the rules. He broke the rules. He broke the rules. I don't think he broke the rules.
Well, I think this is definitely a conversation for a potential civil rights case, right? I think that's what it's going to come down to. I think that this is something that should be worked out in federal court. Again, you know, listen, someone that was out there getting illegal firearms off the street, this is very questionable. At the same token, you have to know your audience, right? And he's a known figure. He's a known figure by the cops. He's not a threat. I mean, easily they could have even been a conversation like, hey, listen, I see the bulge of a firearm. I understand you have a permit or you don't. You know what? This is not the place for it. You know what? Maybe you should bring that home. Or you know what? Let's put that at the precinct. At least have a conversation. We're not talking about an adversarial, violent perpetrator on the street. we do still have the Second Amendment. I think that's really questionable. I think honestly, John, what do we talk about all the time? We talk about it yesterday. We talk about common sense, right? Common sense. Know your audience. Know your baseline, right? You're there with cops at a funeral. He's a known figure. You know who he is. This is not a potential subject that you have no idea who this person is. He's not doing anything that appears to be nefarious. He's not making any suspicious movements. He just happens to be in possession of a firearm. You know what? And I agree with you. Where is the signage there? Is there particular signage that actually indicates that's a sensitive location, that the firearm should not be there? And that's the other thing. That's the problem in New York. A concealed carry in New York is pretty much useless. You can wipe your ass with it.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, like, and that's the thing. Like, I got a ton of phone calls yesterday after we announced this, and I know you did too, Eric. And I'm like, I was like laughing. I'm like, all right, I know who Hakim is for a long time now. I've spoken with him several times, and I'm like, he's not a public safety threat at all. He's legally licensed firearm carry holder. He's there taking photos of you guys. He's taking photos of you guys, and I'm sorry, especially the egomaniacs, they love it. They love it. You can't tell me that they don't love it. They love getting their photo taken. They love seeing themselves. There's some issues I see, and we could talk to Hakim about that today when it comes to exposing cops' badge numbers and names. But that's already out of the bag too. You know what I mean? Like, that's already out there. The job has taken to dangle you guys out in front of the public, in front of the media. So it's not just his photos that are getting open sourced and misused by the 50A. It's every photo. It's the job's doing it to you as well. So it's there's a lot of things around it, but I think overall, when we talk about morale, I think Hakim's a morale booster. If people don't want to get that picture taken, they don't get that picture taken. A lot of people like to get that picture taken. I personally enjoy his page. I think when I see it, it portrays cops in a different light. It humanizes them. Something that this podcast has been doing, right? We've been humanizing the profession. We've been showing you that individuals inside of the profession of law enforcement are very nuanced. There's differences amongst every single one of them, and I think that's exactly what Hakim's also doing through photography.
Yeah, I think that his pictures tell a story, right? And it's almost like his pictures are like pictures of action, and for the most part in a positive light. So I've seen numerous pictures, and I think the most prolific picture I've seen by perception law enforcement is actually of a female police officer. I actually used to work with her in PSA 7, but it's a picture of her where she's got a long gun and she's working in I think it's SRG maybe, or one of the units. I think it's SRG, but she's got a long gun, and the picture that was captured was picture of like an action picture, and it was like, it tells a story. Like, here's a woman, working in a masculine environment, who has those masculine traits. She's still feminine, right? But she has those masculine traits. She's carrying a long gun. It was a great picture. Just the way the picture was casted, and there's so many different pictures where he catches of cops. And you're right. And cops of different shapes and different sizes, where he's not really putting an emphasis on just the most fit cops, but the way he does it in a nice light. And I think it really doesn't matter at this point. With 50A, your name is out there anyway. And now we've moved on to facial recognition. So at least if your name is out there in a positive light, right? Here's a picture of a sergeant, and you can see he looks squared away. He looks like, I'm sure some people say, oh, look at his facial hair. I could care less. You can tell he looks like he's in shape. His uniform looks squared away. He looks like he's on point. The picture's a great picture. It shows, a police officer doing their job and when they're squared away, rather than pictures that are taken to show, some overweight police officer, some sloppy police officer. So the pictures that he captures, they really do tell a story.
No, yeah, I agree. And like I said, I think that, in a world, in a time, and particularly like when his page popped up, it was a time where they wanted the cop removed from Paw Patrol. They didn't want any remnants of a cop anywhere. Like they were talking about like removing action figures that showed law enforcement because we were such horrible people, because the world had shifted against anti-police, became it became cool to hate cops. It happened a few times throughout my career. It happened after the Michael Brown incident. It happened after the Eric Garner incident. But in 2020, I'd never seen anything like it. It was like I was like, wow, this is insane. You guys were calling us heroes yesterday. Like, how do we make this jump? How do we make this jump? And I was like, and even when they were calling us heroes, I knew that was short lived. But we went from being heroes, people cheering for us at select times, like clapping as you drove down the block, to the next day. There was an all-out assault that anything to do with law enforcement was racist, and law enforcement are horrible people. So at the time that this page was started, it really went against the messaging of the world, which was that cops are awful people, cops are racist, cops are murderers, cops hate the public. We need to defund the police. And I think everybody forgets that when now we go ahead and it's a little friendlier, and it's okay to say you're a cop now, and it's and people like you now, and now you get treated a little better when you go into the restaurant. Some businesses will actually let you use the bathroom or treat you nice when you walk in. And I think a lot of people forget the time that Hakim started doing this, and I think that's something we should keep in our head throughout all of this, is that Hakim literally, and I think that's one of the points I want to ask him about, is that specifically, like, what made you do this during that time when it really wasn't friendly to do?
I'm glad you brought up 2020, right? Because not only did 2020 have a cool down period, right? I can understand a cool down period, right? We have the height of the riots, and I can understand having a cool down period. But what they did was they had a period to demonize the police, right? If you went to Netflix, if you turned to Netflix, it was a complete demonization of law enforcement. And exactly that. Paw Patrol was removed. And think about that. Think about what that says. When we remove Paw Patrol, we're now demonizing law enforcement to children. So we're trying to indoctrinate our children to see the police in a horrible light, right? So we're indoctrinating our children. And I forgot the name of the police show, one of those reality live police shows that was removed from television. John, if you remember the show, maybe you could let me know. I can't remember it, but one of the live.
I don't watch TV, so there's no way I remember.
I'm a big movie buff, but there was a live police show that was removed. So that was the demonization of law enforcement. And so for this to be in complete opposition to that, and what these pictures are, these pictures don't, right? These, as I said, pictures tell a story. They tell a story of cops in action, of them doing their job. Like that picture you put, that female police officer, I think that's a fantastic picture because that exemplifies what we talk about. Here was a female police officer you just had, right? You can tell she looked really nice. She looks beautiful. But yet she looks extremely feminine. But she looks squared away. She looks like she's capable of doing the job. So that's what we want to see, right? In a positive light. So, and that's my point also, right? You could be feminine, and you could be beautiful, and you could still do police work and be squared away and have those masculine traits to do this job. I mean, look at this picture of this police officer. Clearly, they're involved in probably a scene, doing a canvas. He's working. These are great pictures to honor police officers. That's really what it is, to honor police officers. And ultimately, what's great about these pictures, not necessarily if you want to be in a picture to see yourself, but here's an opportunity for your family, your wife, your husband, your kids, your grandparents, to see a picture of you and say, wow, here's a picture for them to put up on the wall and say, hey, this is my son, this is my wife, this is my husband, and to be proud of you. So that's where I think it's for the families. Because a lot of times families don't really know exactly what you do. And I would say for the most part, because we care about our families, and John, you probably did the same thing. I never really told my family what I do. If I told them all the things that I did, they'd probably be terrified, and they would never want me to go to work. So I would kind of downplay it. So Tom, shout out to you, brother. Here we go. Coffee and donuts, $1.99. It was cops. They removed cops. Yes, it was cops, and there was another one also. I think it was Live PD. Actually, one of my cops that was in PSA 7, he went down to Richland, South Carolina. He was on that show. Vias Ventura's Coffee and Donuts, $5. It was Live PD after the George Floyd George Floyd farce. Yes, absolutely. That was it. Live PD. Sure. That show was taken down. Yeah, I think there was plenty others. Demonization. And also it was a lot of racism on Netflix. They were trying to get rid of any television shows that had white police officers, and they started putting shows with just black. And they said, "Wow, look at this! We're cutting racism with racism. We're cutting discrimination with discrimination." Terrible time. I mean, thank God the tides are starting to turn. But I mean, we saw the infection of law enforcement. We saw it through actual law enforcement. We saw it through media. We saw it through television. Just a crazy time, John.
Yeah, so we're gonna bring Hakim up in a second, but before we do, it baffles my mind the hate that he gets from police officers. So this is just one caption. I mean, he's written thousands and thousands of captions, but this is the caption that he writes. For the ones who like to constantly criticize and point out what they could have done if they were in the situation, I kindly urge you to once again take the test. If you hate law enforcement so bad and you want to see change within the system, then take the test. It's so fun in games until you find yourself in a situation where you're dealing with a barricaded individual or you're executing a search warrant and you have a gun drawn, but you have no idea what's behind the door waiting for you. There are a few that found themselves in the situation, and there are a few of them that did not make it home. You can say all that you would do in a situation until you find yourself in that situation. Some of you liberals cry because you only have to work 2 days out of the week and you have to show up for work on the weekend. Just imagine how you'd perform if you were executing a search warrant. If you think it's so easy, then take the test. The department is actually backfilling academy classes. They need people. Sign up and take the test and keep your mouth shut. So I mean, he is a guy who's done so much to support law enforcement in a time when you can't find media, to do so. So, I guess without further ado, let's bring up to the stage Hakim Gibson. Hakim, what's up, my brother?
Hey, what's going on? Can you hear me?
We hear you good, bro.
Loud and clear. Hakim, how you doing,
perfect.
man?
I'm good. How's everything going with you guys?
Yeah, no, good. Listen, we're excited to do the interview. So, Hakim, before we get started into what happened, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, where you grew up, how you found yourself in New York City, and how you found yourself doing what you're doing?
Okay, so as I said, my name is Hakim Gibson, and I run the law enforcement page, Perception of Law Enforcement. I was actually born in Jamaica, and it's funny because won't get into too much detail, but everyone thinks I was born in London, but I was born in Jamaica. My father brought me up here when I was a baby, and so I grew up in East New York. Most of my life, I grew up in East New York, and I'm a criminal justice major. I graduated from BMCC, got an acceptance into John Jay. Was supposed to finish my bachelor's there, but actually thought I was getting into a class, so I just put that on hold. I plan on going back to finish, but I do have my associates in criminal justice at this time.
Outstanding. So what attracted you to law enforcement, and did you want to be a cop? I know you said you're looking to get into the classes. So what attracted you to law enforcement, and did you want to be a cop, and do you still want to be a cop at this point? Is that something that you want to do, or you're more into the photography of it? And so, what's your interest in law enforcement?
So you know what? It's so funny because it's like, as a kid, like I always wanted to be a first responder at one point. I always wanted to be a first responder. It's so funny because as a kid, I was like, when I was younger, I was like more leaning towards the FD side of being a first responder at the time. Like I was really crazy about like, being on FDNY as a kid and everything like that. And then it's so funny because like, someone asked me when I was a kid, I have good memory. Someone asked me, they're like, "Hey, do you want to be a cop?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to be a cop. Like, think I'm trying to die or something like that." Because, you hear about all like the line of duty deaths. So as a kid, I'm like, no, no. But then it's funny because as a kid, like, I grew up in a strict old fashioned household, and we were taught to have like, respect for law enforcement. And I walked past, Thomas Jefferson as my mother was taking me home, and see the cops, and there was never a day that I passed the cops and I would not say anything to them. It was like, hello, good afternoon, how's your day? and everything like that. And then it's funny because as I started to get older, I really started to see the lack of respect that cops get. Like even when I was in high school, back then it was 2008, so I guess this must have been the time when the starting pay was like 25,000. And I remember this one kid, Michael Ramos, he was sitting in the classroom and he's like, "Yo, cops don't make shit, yo." And I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yo, they only start you at 25,000." So I started to see, like, the lack of respect that cops get even for doing the job, even for signing up and everything like that. And I said to myself, and I did have a love for the criminal justice field as well. I said to myself, it was either law school, which at this point I was like, no, I can't really afford that, or law enforcement, and that's why I chose the path. I always had respect for law enforcement.
Hakeem, you grew up in East New York. What was you said that you always were fond of first responders. You know, during the time you were growing up and still today, police have a very bad rap with how they manage and police, particularly black and brown communities. Had you had any negative interactions with police growing up? Had you seen things that you didn't like about the police while you were growing up? Like, what was it about the police that attracted you to the profession?
Well, to be honest, I've never really had, like, it's crazy because it's a little bit different for me. I grew up in an old-fashioned household, so my way of growing up was, it was literally school, home, and church. And if you weren't in any of the three places, most likely you were doing something dumb. Like, it was, for me, it's like I really, I guess, didn't have time to have any kind of interaction with the police as much, because as soon as school was done, I'm on my way home, I'm doing my papers, I'm doing my homework. And it's like one of those things where you just, you come home, you stay your ass inside the house for the rest of the day. So I didn't really have time. And to be honest, like, I feel like a negative interaction with the police, the only not negative interaction I think I've ever had with the cop was, I was on the L train at Broadway Junction. It was me and a couple friends from high school, and we were laughing and everything. And it was a black cop that said, "Oh, you want to get off the train?" I was like, "No." He's like, "So shut up." And I say, like, the negative interaction and all of that, that can come from anyone. It's not just white cops. It can come from disgruntled Asians or whatever the case is. I don't think it's always a race thing.
It's a pleasure to hear that, right? We had Edwin Raymond on our podcast where we had an interview with him. He's been a controversial figure with the NYPD and in the public eye. I'm sure you know who Edward Raymond is.
Of course, of
Yeah,
course. I
so
photographed him. I photographed him. I've spoken to him on the phone. We've actually gotten into debates over the over the phone.
I can
I
see
know
that
him.
from.
Yeah,
So what's interesting about that to me, right, is the way people see the world, right? And sometimes I even say to my wife, sometimes when we're talking about different things or even politics or whatever the case is, right? I'll say, it's interesting. You're not right and I'm not wrong, or vice versa. I said, just certain things we see the world differently. So it's so interesting to see, Edwin Raymond talk about how he saw the world growing up and his lens and what he thought of the police and what he thought of white people as far as in the police department. And he even talks about that. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. He talks about a lot of times the racism that he saw was actually from black cops because of the system. And here you talked about a negative interaction was actually with a black police officer. But it's quite interesting that you had a positive light of law enforcement. But I feel like you and I had a conversation already, because I used to say this all the time, when you're a young kid, if you're actually busy and you're involved in activities and you're doing your schoolwork and you're going from point A to point B and you're not hanging out in the street corner, you probably won't have negative interactions with the police despite being black or white, right? Because John talks about it all the time. He was a white kid in the neighborhood and he was stopped by the police, and he said he was hanging out in the park with his friends. So I think it really debunks the fact of this whole racist idea. So I want to thank you for that, and I appreciate it. So with that being said, it's interesting. You talked about, right, not wanting to get into danger, but here you were interested in the fire department, right, which is also a dangerous profession. But so what intrigues you about law enforcement? And at this point, did you try to apply to the academy at some point during this time? Or did you want to be more on the background of it?
no, I wanted to actually be out there. I wanted to actually get on the job. I wanted to, be a part of this. And it's funny is because people told me this all the time, that people tell me, they're like, I've gotten a few people who told me, they're like, "Oh, if you get on the job, you'd be great because, if you have photography skills, and You could get pushed into a unit, and you could get pushed into a unit like evidence collection or crime scene or taru. And one of the things I told people when it came to getting on was, listen, if I were to get on this job, let's say if I got on NYPD, right? If I were to get on NYPD, yes, I have photography experience. Do I want to get pushed to the front of the line? No, I don't. I honestly don't. Like even though I have photography experience, I have my own gear, I know how to use a camera, I know how to work a camera. Do I want to get bounced? Do I want to get pushed into a unit like crime scene? Do I want to get pushed into a unit like evidence collection? Yes, I would like it, but do I want to skip past everyone and come off of patrol? No. Because at the end of the day, the way how I see it is I have to learn patrol. And to me, I think it's ridiculous for me to come in, and because I have experience with photography, even though I have legit experience with photography, it's ridiculous for me to come in and skip past everyone else. Meanwhile, there are people on this job who've been dying to take a promotion for a while and cannot get a promotion. But all of a sudden, it's me coming in and I'm going to skip everyone. Meanwhile, everyone has to bust their ass to get to a certain unit or to take a promotion or to get to where they want to be. No. If I were to come on this job, to be honest, I would want to learn patrol and want to learn the ins and outs. Want to learn from the people, I call them dinosaurs. Want to learn from those experienced people. Want to learn from the experienced detectives, the people that seen it all, covered it all on this job. That's exactly what I want to do, to be honest. I don't really feel the need to, skip over anyone.
Did you take the test to become an NYPD officer?
Yes, I did. I did. And shortly after the incident, they sent me a disqualification.
All right, we'll get our way up to that. Um, so could you just tell us a little bit about why you started? I've been following your page a long time, dude. As soon as I left, I was never on social media, but as soon as I left the department, and I got on social media, somebody sent me a page. So I've been following your page a long time. I'm a fan of the work. I'm a fan of the photos. I like seeing the way you portray cops, you portray their mission. What made you start doing that?
Okay, so it's funny because originally when I had that page, it wasn't really, it was more, at first it was more of a personal photography page, and then after that it just, yeah, it was a personal photography page, you know, taking photos throughout the city and stuff like that. And it's so funny because a lot of people thought that it was just recent, but I stopped a few cops years ago and asked them to take their photos, like even back in 2015 and stuff like that. But I wasn't really into the page. And it's funny, believe it or not, how the page really got running is because of the pair up twins. I don't know if you remember the pair up twins. The father used to dress these his little babies up as NYPD officers, and legit had this remote control car with the NYPD decals that he had custom made. And he used to drive his babies around. Like Kevin Hart met the twins. Kevin Hart had a field day. He used to drive them throughout New York City, and they became extremely famous. And so I photographed them, and then so I would go up to the 3-3 because that's where they would be most of the time. I photographed them up there. Then after that, the guys from the 3-3 got photographed by me, and they loved it. They really loved it. I would photograph those guys. I put them on the page, and people loved it. And then I'd get invited. Like people would call me and ask me, "Hey, can you, hey, like for example, there's this guy. I think he was a deputy inspector. I think his name Deputy Inspector Gill in the 3-3 or the
Mhm.
three. I think it was either the 3-3 or the three. No, 3-4. He was having a walkout, and people would call me. Be like, "Hey, can you come for this walkout?" I came in there. Um, so the whole point was I started running the page, and I started putting up more photos, and it got to the point where I would actually stop cops, like whether they were walking down the street or whether they were in their car, and I would take photos. And it got into the point where people actually got to know me so much that people actually got to know me so much to the point where people would stop me, like people would call me up, people would hit me up on Instagram. Hey, I'm Secret Service, or I'm HSI, or I'm Homeland Security, um I'm PD, I'm out of the 7, can you come and take my photo? What day are you available? I work midnights, I work this tour, I work that tour. So it got to the point where people were now reaching out to me and asking me to come. I had cops like legit basically stop, like saw me walking down the street one day and like legit basically stop in broad daylight and say, "Hey, I've been dying for you to take my photo. I've been dying to meet you." I would go to the skate park. All right. I'd go to the skate park, LES, and guys from the five, they would see me and they would get photographed by me. So the whole point was I started running. That's one of the reasons as to why I started running the page. The main reason was because I wanted people to see what law enforcement does. I want people to see the other side of law enforcement. I don't want people to see the side of law enforcement that the media makes them out to be. The media portrays them as robots that are power hungry. They're power hungry. The only thing that they have on their mind is getting an arrest and getting a body. No, that's not what I want. I want to, you see the pictures, you see the smiles on the officers' faces, you know, and then you have some pictures where you can see the officers, you can see all the emotions. You can see that this officer is tired. Like legit, he's standing on a crime scene, but the guy just did a triple, you know, the guy just did a double. So that's the whole point. As I want people to see what law enforcement does. I want people to see the other side of law enforcement. I want people to see the side that the media doesn't show, the side that's exhausted from doing a double, the side that's exhausted from doing a triple, the side that, you're either sleeping in your car because you have a 4-hour window. I want people to see also the jovial side, the happy side of cops, that New York City cops are approachable. All right. And yeah, okay, you may have one or two people that may not be approachable, but that's everywhere. I find if you're gonna have, that's what the media does is portray cops to be this, that, and the third when that's everywhere. You're in retail, you encounter stupid people. You're in whatever field you do, whatever field you're in, there are people that you are gonna be next to that you're gonna turn around, look and shake your head and say, how the hell are you still here? Or how the hell did you get this job?
I think it's very fitting the way that you explain it. It really it exemplifies, it solidifies the name of your page, Perception Law Enforcement, right? Which I think goes back to what we were saying, right? The lens that has been described about the police department from Edwin Raymond is quite different from the lens that you saw, and you see it in a positive light, and that's why I think excuse me, the name of your page is very fitting, and I think it's a great name, Perception Law Enforcement, because your perception may be different of what the media has portrayed the police, and the perception of these pictures is exactly that: police working, they're exhausted hours. You have police, you show they're citizens too, right? These are good people. They're smiling, right? They're proud to do a job. They look professional, but they're smiling. They're good people. So I love the name of the page, excuse me, as Perception Law Enforcement, because it's exactly that. You have given opposition to the negative light that's been put out by the media and by the public eye, and the perception of law enforcement is quite different and polarizing to your perception of law enforcement. So I think it's interesting how you have this positive positive ideology of law enforcement. So ultimately, you said it comes from your family and the values, which I think is fantastic. So Patrick Donahue, one of our friends and listeners to the podcast, he asked a great question. So is this just a hobby, or is this something that you get paid for doing photos of law enforcement? Or was this a hobby that started out? Has this become a business? What exactly is this for you?
Okay, so it hasn't become a business. If people want to donate, like, people have my phone number, people have my Cash App, people have my PayPal. They can donate if they would like to, if they have it. But other than that, this originally started as simply a support page. It was, I do other photography gigs. I do weddings. I've received tremendous amount of support from cops as well. I've done weddings for cops. I've done gender reveals. I've done baby showers. I've done bridal showers. I've done all these different types of events for cops. So I do that, on the side. But the main important part is of this page is just for law enforcement to have support. So like people do donate if they would like to. I don't set a price for the photos. I'm not like, okay, well, here your photos are $50. No, you donate what you have. You donate what you have. But as I said, this all started as originally a support page to convey the message because Channel 4 isn't doing it, BBC isn't doing it, Daily Mail isn't doing it, MSNBC, all of these news media outlets, they're not doing it, and To add on to that too as well, is I know for a fact that this page had an impact on cops, especially, and I'll tell you when it had an impact on cops. It had an impact on cops in the year 2020, when you had the George Floyd riots. When you had the George Floyd riots, you got to remember, a lot of people, a lot of pages. I'm pretty sure when you were on, John, when you were on back then, I'm pretty sure you saw plenty of pages that did nothing but spew hate towards the cops. So it's crazy because I had a few cops tell me, they were like, yo, one day we were like scrolling through Instagram and we were shaking our head at the post, like at the post that we were seeing. And all of a sudden I stumble upon your page and I'm looking at it and it's like, wow, this guy actually likes us. Wow, this guy's not actually spewing hatred or spewing anti-cop rhetoric. So, I know that this page had a basically had a positive impact on cops because a lot of people were um really looking at different sites, as I said, and they were seeing nothing but hatred. And that's the one thing I wanted cops to see, is that they do have a support system you know
So, and then, I gave my opinion about the morale of your work. And just to back up on Pat Donahue's question, I think that you should be paid. I honestly think you should be employed by the department. But I do have a business idea for you that we could discuss after, for you, because I think this work is vital. I think it's necessary, and I think that you're taking your time, you're spending time, valuable time that you could be used working elsewhere, spending gas, tolls, commuting in. And I think that this is you provide a valuable service to the men and women of the New York City Police Department, not just through your page. And I think that these photos are valuable. And I think there's other type of photos that you could do where it would be beneficial to both the person you're taking the photo of and you. And we'll talk about that after. But what would you say? How do you feel that has impacted your work particularly? How do you feel has impacted the morale of the men and women of the New York City Police Department, particularly when you're rolling up on them during those tough times, at those details? How is your perception of how you are welcomed by the New York City Police Department, and what are the impacts on morale that you believe that your work is having?
well, I feel like my work had a great impact on people. I mean, whether it was just it didn't matter the rank. I felt like the moment cops saw me show up, like, occasionally, listen, occasionally you have cops that, like, I've pulled up on scenes and it's a scene of a shooting, and as I said, these guys out here, they just done a double, or they just done a triple, and they're exhausted, but even when they're tired, they're like, Hakeem, like, I love your photos, I would love to take photo, but, like, I'm sweaty, I'm basically a double or triple in. But even then, like, I know for a fact that my work has boosted the morale. Even yesterday, I was at a crime scene. It was in the 107. Man fatally shot in the lobby. The detectives are there working, and they see me, and there's a few of them that are like, "Oh, who is this guy?" And they're like, "Oh, he's good. He's the one that runs the page on Instagram, Perception of Law Enforcement." And you heard them. They're like, "Oh, so that's the guy." They're like, "I had no idea who the faces behind it." And it's so funny because I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. A lot of people actually think I'm a white guy. Like, a lot of people who don't know the face behind the page actually thinks that I'm a white guy. But as I said, not to get off topic, I know for a fact that my work has had a tremendous amount of impact on the morale. Especially when you're on a crime scene, and you see stations there, you see like the news media outlets and everything like that. And I know for a fact that, like, when I see cops at a crime scene, and the moment you see a news station come and they have their camera, you see how quickly that cop turns their back to make sure that their face isn't in there. And when cops see me, when detectives see me, sergeants, high-ranking officials see me, they know who I am, and I'm very welcomed. I'm very welcomed when I come to the scene. Even even if it's a shooting and they have one area blocked off, right? They have one area, like, even half the block shut down. And, like, let's say they find extra shell casings that are somewhere else. I'd have guys come up to me. They're like, "Akeem, we know who you are. We love your work and everything." but we're extending the crime scene down the block. And I'm like, okay, cool. I got what I came here for. It's cool, no problem. You know, or I had one crime scene in the Bronx, and there wasn't any tape there, and the detective walks up to me and he's like, Hakeem, you know, we love you, but we got to get you out of here. But I'm very welcome, to be honest.
Listen, there's no doubt about it, Hakeem. I could read a room and I could make a good character assessment on people. That's what we do as cops. And John does the same thing. Our friends and listeners, a lot of our friends and listeners are active, retired, and I can see right away you are extremely congenial, and I can see you're a good person. There's no doubt about it. You can tell right away. You can't hide these character traits. They just you can tell when you talk to somebody, you have conversations. That's what's great about these long form podcasts. By the way, I want to thank my friends and listeners on the podcast. The comments today are flowing. They're great comments. By the way, you're getting well received here, Hakeem. I don't know if you take a look at the comments. They're great. Rob Lukash, I don't know if you know him. He's actually a former chief of the NYPD. He was on here the other day. He did a great interview. Check him out. He says the department should hire Hakeem to take live action photos to put the department in a good light, rather than the stupid stage photos CEOs put out. Absolutely. I think that's the great thing about that. These pictures are organic. And I have to say, you've done a great job, because I've seen people have taken pictures of law enforcement and try to put out there. And sometimes the pictures come off as corny or they come off as cocky. But I think you've done a great job of putting these pictures out and really giving the perception of a professional look, and with them smiling at the same time, showing that you've humanized them through these pictures. I think that's really what it is. You've humanized them. So that's why I say kudos to you, man. And you deserve to get paid from it. A lot of our friends here, Sherry Albo says you deserve to get paid for it. You do, because I think you are having a major impact on the morale of the police department. Shout out to Tom. Tom, he threw us some coffee and donuts. He says you sound like Marlon, which I think is hysterical. You sound like Marlon's twin. But I think, honestly, you have an ultimate impact. So you talked about anti-police rhetoric. So talk about morale and the perception from law enforcement within. What impact have you had, if any, on any potential anti-police groups out there, or anyone in particular that's anti-police, or maybe people that are positive out there? What are you hearing from your regular citizens when it comes to your page?
From regular citizens, I do get tremendous amount of support. Don't get me wrong, I do get a lot of support from regular citizens and stuff like that. The only people I can say I've literally had a problem with, obviously, is, and I don't even entertain them nowadays. At one point I used to, but now I just gotten to the point where I said I don't have the time for it. The only people I've ever had nasty negative experiences with were, obviously BLM and Antifa. Those are the only ones so far, and those pages that do spew anti-cop rhetoric. But for the most part, to be honest, citizens see what I do in the streets and everything like that. And I'll be honest with you, you know the media, and that's another thing that people we need to I've been trying to tell people lately, stop listening to the media, stop listening to everything that they're saying, because even though the media might portray this and the media does it's crazy, because the media does a great job of getting people to fight against one another, and that's what I've been trying to explain to people, that's all the media wants, is the division. I get positive impacts from citizens. Citizens see me photographing officers in the street, and I have people stop in their tracks, and it's like, yo, and they're cheering for the officers, they're rooting for the officers and everything like that. I've had citizens stop me and be like, hey, can I see how that photo came out? And I'll hold the camera to them and show them how the photo came out, and they love it. So at the end of the day, like, there, as I said, there are millions of interactions with police officers daily. All right. Most of them, a good 98% of the interactions are positive. The media won't show the 98% of the interactions, but they will gladly show the 2% and make everyone hate each other. But other than that, I've gotten nothing but positive impact, positive vibes and positive energy from citizens.
Oh, yeah. Listen, big shout out to first grade detective Desmond Stokes, 40 years on the job, still going, friend and listener of the Finest Unfiltered. Hakim, so you've been doing all this great work. You've been doing it out of the goodness of your own heart. You've been doing it to really boost the morale of the NYPD and change the perception of law enforcement, right? I don't know if you agree, but I personally believe it's something that God
Yeah.
told you to do, and that's why you've been doing that. Um, so let's get into a little different topic now. Obviously, the murder of Jonathan Diller was a horrible situation. Could you bring us to the day of Jonathan Diller's funeral? You woke up that morning, what you were planning on doing, and kind of what happened there.
Okay, so it's crazy because I was at work. Everything was good. I did ask my boss to I asked my boss to actually let me out early because I went to 1PP to pick something up, and then after that I went down to Fulton Street. I was like, okay, I'm since I'm down here, I just grabbed the A train, and that's the quickest way home. Grab the A, and I photographed like two of the National Guard members and one boss that was there. And I photographed them, and as I'm photographing them, my phone's blowing up, the group chat's blowing up, officer shot. And so at first I thought that, then after that it said correction officer, and I'm like, correction officer? It was like most likely probably off duty, and I thought it was an off duty incident, but it like phone started blowing up and blowing up, and then I'm hearing blood bank, and I'm like, blood bank, that doesn't sound too good. So um my phone's blowing up and everything. I didn't even know. Thinking it's an off duty incident. I get home, quickly change from out of my uniform that I was wearing, drive over there. I felt like the longest 38 minutes isn't really such of a bad drive to the Rockaways. Usually you can get there quicker with no traffic, but felt like the longest 38 minutes of my entire life. I am rushing down there, and as I'm rushing, I'm seeing units flying down Nassau Expressway. If you know exactly where that is, like going towards, like passing JFK, going towards the Costco in Five Towns, I'm seeing units fly, like multiple units, unmarked, marked, everything, everyone and their mothers flying. So I'm like, this has to be a big thing. It really has to. And so I get there and everything like that, and then I'm at the scene, and I see his unmarked, the Chevy Impala that's there, and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely PD. I don't think this is not an off-duty incident. This is an on-duty incident. So at the time, you know, one of my bosses told me, she's like, yeah, it's an NYPD officer that was shot, and I was like, what did he get hit? And she's like, in the stomach, and I'm like, okay, um, most likely I'm thinking that he survived, like, he's going to be coming out of the hospital later on that night, or he's going to be coming out the next day. And then my boss tells me um it's a fatal. And I'm like, I'm saying to myself, I'm like, wow, uh, this is crazy. It's like I felt like I just, like, time flies, but it's also as fast as time flies, it feels like it's close enough. I was like, felt like a year ago, or it felt like just yesterday. I just went to two separate funerals for two NYPD officers, and I'm like, now I'm gonna be going to another one again. I ended up leaving there, and I ended up going to Jamaica Hospital. That's where he was bought. Ended up going to Jamaica Hospital, saw the whole CRT unit, gave my support, shook hands with people that I knew, gave hugs to people that I knew, gave hugs to people that I didn't know, just been there to show my support and everything like that. It's freezing that night too. It's starting to warm up because it's spring, it's March, but it's also temperature drops that night. It's freezing. I leave my car around the corner. I'm lucky enough to get parking. And overall, I'm gonna tell you, that was an extremely sad day. Like, that was an extremely sad day. And I think it was the first time I've ever, it's not, no, it's actually not the first time, but just seeing, them wheeling him out of the hospital on the gurney, straight into the bus. It's one of the saddest things you'll ever see. And seeing the family, and it's crazy because it's like, this guy, like couple hours earlier, this guy was leaving his house to, start his tour. And I keep on telling people that there's no such thing as a routine traffic stop. I keep on educating people that there's nothing routine about a traffic stop. And yeah, and it's funny because I still talk to people about this now. I express to people about how, I won't get into too much details unless you want me to, but I explain to people how this bail reform has truly, truly, and I'm like, excuse my language, has truly fucked this city up.
I mean, clearly, no doubt about it, right? In order to have, I'm not a photographer, but in order to have in any profession or any hobby, right? In order to be good at what you
Mhm.
do, you have to have a passion. You have to have an affinity for it. So clearly, you have an affinity for law enforcement, especially the NYPD, which really exemplifies in your pictures. So before we segue and we talk about, we want to hear your story. Obviously about your arrest incident. I think our friends and listeners want to get into that. But I just want to know at this point, you seem to be in the right place at the right time. You're in different parts of the city capturing photos of law enforcement officers doing their job. Do you have a scanner? Do you just kind of pick where you're going to for that day? Do you have a scanner? Do you kind of
I
trail
had
of where
I
you're
had
going
one
to?
built in
What's
I
that?
had one that was built in my car, but I bought it for someone to do some repairs on it, and the idiot disconnected the radio. So I have one portable, which I barely use, but 9 times out of 10, like I just end up like, especially because everything is encrypted now, I end up relying on Citizen and the information that, because I work for a media outlet. I'm freelance, so I end up relying on what my bosses are sending me, like the information that my bosses are sending me.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm glad to ask you that question, right? Because to me, it was obvious to me that observation that you're traveling around with a scanner. So obviously, how did that change for you then? How did that impact you once the encryption of radios? We had Loud Labs on here before. We talked about he does a great job of getting a lot of great videos out there on social media of independent news when it comes to the police department. But with the encryption radios, that really changed the game. So did that impact you on capturing photos with these encryption of the radios?
A little bit. Like there was a scene that I missed last week. The scene was that Uber passenger that was beaten to death in Coney Island and Neptune Avenue. I didn't know about that, to be honest. So it does have a negative impact, not being able to hear the radios, not being able to know exactly what's going on. There's a few shootings that I didn't know about until the next day. Like, there's been a few things that I have missed. So it does have a negative impact on me. Like, it does have a negative impact in me being able to go out there, do work, and everything like that. You know, it has a tremendous impact, and it's not good.
Yeah. All right. So listen, we got 614 people on here this morning. Thanks for joining us. We're joined by Hakim Gibson, the man behind the page Perception of Law Enforcement on Instagram. Check him out. Go give him a follow. So Hakim, I want to bring you up to the day of Jonathan Diller's funeral and what happened to you at that day. Could you bring us through that morning and the events that happened that led up to your arrest?
Okay, so it was a Saturday morning. I got up. I believe that the funeral actually, I think it started at 9 o'clock in the morning. But I got up, got dressed, left the house, and everything like that. And so, I have, well, not have. I had a valid concealed carry permit from the city of New York. All right. And Supreme Court overturned the decision and basically allows our civilians to conceal carry. Now, you guys all know back in your days, a few years ago, getting a firearm as a civilian was one of the hardest things to do. All right. It was one of the hardest things to get. You actually had a greater chance of winning the lottery. All right. Or maybe even finding a bag with $100,000 in cash than the city giving you a concealed carry permit. So long story short, I get my concealed carry permit. And it's funny because a lot of people have their comments and they have their sayings, oh, why did you bring a gun to a funeral? But I'm gonna get into that part a little bit later and I'm gonna explain, what happened. So I bring my gun with me. I bring my gun with me for the main reason is everyone thinks that, oh, I'm just going to the funeral. And, I'm like, no, I have other places that I've planned to go. I was actually supposed to leave from Long Island, go all the way into the Bronx. Then after that, I was supposed to come back, and I wasn't sure what time I was going to be coming back. And so, with that said, now I'm at the funeral. I'm taking photos of everybody. All right. And I'm wearing a three-piece suit. All right. Not just a regular two-piece
Me-
jacket and pants.
and it was a medium. It was a size medium. We gotta get that. It's like in between a small and a medium. Super tight is what I'm
Yeah, no, my suits.
I'm guilty of wearing medium t-shirt. You too,
That's how I
John.
wear my t-shirts, Hakeem. So there's nothing wrong with it. I wear some
Listen,
mediums.
listen, I don't like baggy clothing, so like I don't like baggy clothing, so I'm wearing a slim fit suit, like, or even if you want to say a tight suit or whatever the case is.
Slim
And
fit.
yeah, I'll tell you, like, the one that you have in the main picture that you used that's how I like my suits. I don't like my suits to be baggy. I'm not trying to look like one of those bishops or something like that, where the suit is covering their shoes and everything like that. I'm not trying to look like the Commodores or any of those or the Temptations. But anyway, as I was saying, I'm wearing as I'm saying as I'm saying, I lit I I'm wearing the three-piece suit, man, and I have the jacket, the vest, and the pants. And so, originally, where I put my gun was at the side. Um, for some people, it works. For some people, it doesn't work. The reason why is because the suit is so tight. If I put it at the side, which is a better place to conceal it, it's going to stick out a little bit. And being as my suit is so tight, it's going to stick out. So I put it in front of me. But the vest is actually covering it. So you don't see it unless you really, your eyes have the power of the Space Telescope. I don't see how you'd really see it. But my suit's covering it. And I'm around taking photos of everyone. I'm taking photos of Custom Border Patrol, everyone and their mother that's there, fire marshals, FDNY fire marshals, Nassau County fire marshals, um, everyone, trooper, everyone that was there, I'm taking photos of. So I get a little bit further down, and I'm not in a sensitive location. I do study the law before I go anywhere. And section article 265-01 of the law states that it is considered a sensitive location if there is heightened police protection as well as clear and conspicuous signage stating that it is a sensitive location. There is no sensitive location when there are no signs stating that it is. All right. So I'm there now, and you can see, like, if you look at the suit that I'm wearing in the picture, that's Joey. That's leaning toward the car, and I'm wearing that three-piece suit. My jacket is actually covering it. You can see it's messed up because obviously the Joey ripped the holster and the gun out of my waist. But as I said, I was actually photographing everyone, and there's a NYPD lieutenant, that NYPD canine lieutenant, comes up to me and says, "Hey, I'm Hakeem. Do me a favor. Whenever you can, please, I want the photos of the canines lined up. I really would like to have those photos." I said, "Listen, I'll get to it tonight. I pretty much work on photos at nighttime." He's like, "Yo, you don't have to rush." I'm like, "No, this is not a problem. I'm gonna put everything on a Dropbox link, and everyone's gonna have access to it." So all of a sudden, Joey comes out of nowhere, and I'm like, in my mind, I didn't even expect to see him. Joey comes out of nowhere, and I'm bending down taking photos. So obviously, I'm not even paying attention to whether it is showing or not. I'm not paying attention. I'm bending down, crouching down, taking photos, everything like that. And he comes out of nowhere, and the NYPD lieutenant is right next to him, right next to us. Like, he legit basically interrupts the conversation, and he's like, "Hakeem, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what am I doing?" He's like, what are you doing?" Like, looks down and is like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Joey, like, really?" When I got my permit the Monday afternoon, when I picked it up, um, I told you, you were the first person to know that I had a permit. This is nothing new. You were the
So so
first person to
so
know.
so Hakeem, So Joey's the officer standing behind next to the truck, right, in the black leather jacket.
Yeah, the SUV. That's
How
Joey.
do how
Joseph
do you
Casal.
like tell us your relationship with Joey prior to this incident, and also just while after you tell us about your relationship with Joey, just tell us, and it's very obvious, I think, to everyone, but just so that we hear it, why were you there that morning, right? And so it's very obvious, but I just want you to go over those things. You know Joey, and now you show up here. Why'd you show up there?
Okay, so I knew Joey for about legit 5 years now, and the first time we actually met in person was at Grand Central Terminal. This was during COVID. It was still at the time when it was at the time when it was still dead outside. It was, I mean, it was the summertime. They were starting to reopen a lot of businesses. A lot of places were starting to reopen slowly, but I met him and I photographed him right by the car. Like that, I couldn't find the photo of him with the mask on. That he, I couldn't find that photo, but we knew each other for all of that time. We used to joke around with each other. And one thing I kind of realized, but I really didn't even realize that he was doing it like out of maliciousness. He used to run my plates. So if I had any tickets, he used to run my plates and tell me, "Oh, how much I owe, how much I owe on tickets and everything like that." And I'm like, okay, yeah. And I'm like, Joey, I paid them off already. But he used to do that, and I never thought anything of it. Like, he used to call me and tell me, "Oh man, I'm on Atlantic Avenue in my post. Stop by, say hi." I would stop by. We would joke around. It was me and another kid. Um, we would joke around, and you tell me I'm at East New York, and I'll be like, okay, well, I have to pass through that area anyway. I'm at the East New York Long Island Railroad Terminal. I'm like, I have to pass through there. He's like, so I used to stop by and visit him on post. Um, I stopped by one time on Atlantic Avenue in Flatbush, and I visit him on post. He came outside, and we'd always make jokes. There was one time I was driving down 42nd Street, and he pulls up next to me, and I'm like, and he, and I rolled down the window. I'm like, "Oh, Joey, it's you." And then we're laughing, and and I told him, I'm like, Joey, I'm not pulling over. Why don't you pull over? And he would like, pull over into the bus lane, come outside, and say hello, and and stuff like that. And so it really caught me by surprise that he would flip the script and turn on me and act like I was a whole different person. It really caught me by surprise. I honestly did not expect that from Joey. Like, I could probably expect it from some other person, but for someone who was so jovial, who was funny at first, I mean, it really gave me a perspective. It really gave me that perspective that not everyone on this planet, like not everyone that's around is your friend, and that's when I truly learned my lesson. But to answer your question as to why I was there at the funeral service, I was there to take pictures, but two, I was there to show my support because I was show my. I don't think I've ever met Dilla in person. I may have. I don't. I photograph so many people, but I show my support for a reason. Listen, God forbid, and I'm being just real. God forbid if anything would have happened to me, whether I became a cop and it happened in the line of duty or off duty, or I'm just a civilian right now. God forbid if anything would have happened to me. All right. I know for a fact that there would be plenty of cops who would show up for me. I know that for a fact. If God forbid something were to happen to me, something tragic, I know that there would be plenty of cops that would show up for me. So at the end of the day, any amount of time that I get to show up for somebody, if I have the time and availability, I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna be there.
Myself and a couple of retired friends on the podcast here commenting, we were all thinking the same thing. We make observations, we listen, we watch, and you had said something, and we were all thinking the same thing. You said you had to pick something up at 1 PP, 1 Police Plaza. So a couple of us were thinking, what do you have to pick up? So you kind of inferred that you picked up your gun permit. So it seems to me, I'm not sure, maybe you could shed some light on this, but it seems to me that you had recently just got your gun permit, and now you had the opportunity to carry the firearm, and you took it with you because you weren't going to be at just a funeral that was going to be in passing throughout your day. Now, clearly, to me, your sense, your ability, and the way that you you show support to law enforcement is through your photographs, right? So it makes sense that you're taking pictures at the funeral because that's how you show support by giving that perception. Also, when you said you're there to honor Jonathan Diller, I believe that, and you're honoring it through photos. Listen, you brought a gun to a funeral, you're taking photos, you're wearing a three-piece suit, you're wearing a speedium, but clearly, you're aware of the law. You spoke about Article 65, right, which is what we, initially talked about. Part of this segment when we started this podcast was 265 Live, and I always use 265 because that's the penal code for firearms. But here, I mean, obviously you have a relationship with Joey, kind of an association, maybe not necessarily a friendship where you're going out, but you know each other over the course of passing 3 years. You go to his post. Clearly, you know each other, joking around together. But unfortunately, it's kind of demonized sometimes in New York, and it's kind of embedded, unfortunately, with the NYPD and just law enforcement in New York that like guns are bad, as compared to where, if you're in Florida or some of these other states, that it's just normal. It's, people carry firearms and have interactions with police, and it's normal behavior. But it's kind of shock and awe when it comes to the possession of firearms, when it comes to law enforcement. So since you were placed under arrest, how did that relationship with Joey impact you? How did that arrest impact your feelings towards the NYPD? Did that change your feelings towards the NYPD? Did you just isolate that you understood that this was just your interaction with Joey? Did that change your interaction towards the entire NYPD? How did that affect you, that arrest?
Well, one, it would never change my impact on the NYPD because first off, he's no longer NYPD. He's, as you can see, even in the photo, that's my permit that they said that I didn't. That he said to everyone that I didn't have, by the way. But it didn't change it. He's not NYPD. He's no longer NYPD. He's MTA police. All right. In terms of how I feel, I kind of distanced myself away from the MTA police. There's a select few that I speak to because I knew them from the time they were on NYPD, and they completely switched over. But other than that, it has not changed my perspective on police, because if I allow that to change my perspective on police, it goes completely against what I'm preaching, that not every single encounter is the same. Like, not every single police officer is the same. I can tell you from my experience that I've met a lot more good cops than bad ones. And unfortunately, unfortunately, you have bad apples everywhere. You have Joey, prime example of a bad apple. Prime example of someone who shouldn't be in law enforcement, but unfortunately, he's the type of person that gets a gun and gets a shield. Um, hasn't changed my experience on law enforcement at all. It hasn't shifted the way how I think about cops. For the first week, I didn't really speak to many cops. Like, I saw cops that I knew, but I kind of drifted away and just minded my own business and went about my business. But I just stopped in my tracks and I said, you know what? At the end of the day, none of these other cops did that. I know plenty of other cops that would have never done that. And I did receive tremendous amount of support that day when that happened. I mean, my phone was off, because obviously I'm sitting in the cell. But when I got out, my phone was blowing up. I had, one of my boys, Vinny, one of the guys from the Smoker Talk, the crime lieutenant. Vinny was one of the first guys to actually blow me up. Vinny was like, yo, what the fuck happened? I have a whole bunch of guys, a whole bunch of people, explain to me what happened. Like, we all hearing that someone got arrested. But yeah, it hasn't changed my perspective.
Hakim, why do you think that action was taken? This is a guy you've been friendly with. He knows you have a concealed carry firearm permit. He knows you're there to take photos of cops. What is in your head? Like, why do you believe that action was taken to lock you up? I personally believe the arrest was a bad arrest. I believe it's fruits of a poisonous tree. I don't believe he had proper ability to even search you at that point. Knowing you have a license, and again, knowing that you're not in a sensitive location, could it have been a mistake that he believed you were in a sensitive location? Possibly, but I don't believe I would have acted in that manner, or most cops would have acted in that manner. If they thought you were violating the law, they would have warned you. You can't be here carrying. You weren't warned. He literally comes up to you as what you're telling us, that he came up to you and basically went right for the bulge that he saw. Why do you think he did that? Do you think he
Okay.
believed you were a threat to the public safety, or that you were going to do something?
No, I'm gonna tell you why I think he did it. First off, Joey knew that I had permit. Like Joey, for example, I'd go to a range in Pennsylvania. I'd go to a range in Pennsylvania. I'd go to a range in New Jersey. I'd take videos of my shooting. I'd post it up because I posted up not just to showcase, but I like hearing the opinions on officers. You guys have 18 plus, 20 plus years on the job. If it's anyone who I believe knows about shooting, it's you guys. You guys have to requal twice a year, and even when you're retired, you still have to requal to maintain your permit. And especially even if you have an armed guard license, you have to do some kinds of requalification. So I posted for my showcasing to showcase as well, but to also get the opinions of officers. I've gotten plenty of opinions and positive feedback and constructive criticism of my shooting, and I'm like, okay, well, next time I go to the range, I can take this and I can apply what I've learned from your constructive criticism. And Joey would message subliminal messages. He'd be like, "Oh, dude, you're obsessed with guns." And I'm like, "So when Colion Noir has a whole channel based on guns, and he's a civilian and he's not a cop, you basically, I guess it's not an obsession, but the moment I own firearms or I plan on owning firearms, then now, according to Joey, I'm an EDP. Like, can somebody make that make sense?" And
Hakeem,
Joey did it. Yeah,
I just want to say thank you for being so forward with this. No, I just because I know this is a tough story, so I appreciate you being so forward with it, especially how you feel about the police department and your honest effect on it. And when keep going. I just want to say I know it's not easy,
yeah.
but I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you. So Joey knows about me. Joey knows that Joey knows my plates. Joey knows the plates to my car. Joey knows pretty much I don't think there's a thing about me that Joey doesn't know about. And I think that Joey and I'm gonna be quite honest with you. I went to London, you know, with one of my boys. He's retired from the job. Him and another friend came, and we're at the we were sitting down. um we were talking about this whole thing, and I told him, I was like, straight up, I'm gonna be real with you, because he went to the funeral. I didn't even know that he went to the funeral. And he's gonna be like, he told me, he's like, Akeem, he did that out of malicious intent. And I told him, I was like, listen, bruv, bruv, he did it because, one, it was malicious intent, and two, he probably thought he was going to go into the command on a Monday morning and everyone's going to be like, "Oh, Joey, yo, man, you did an awesome job, man. You made a you made a gun arrest at a funeral. You stopped and neutralized the threat. You did such a good job." He thought that he was going to probably get recognition. I think that's exactly, I don't see any other way. I think that's exactly why he did it. He did it because he wanted to make a gun arrest. I don't know if it's his first, I don't know if he had a gun arrest before, but I could tell based on his vibe that he was eager. It's funny because as a cop, you learn to read character and you learn to read body language. All right. But even though I'm not a cop and I'm around cops so much and I learn from them, and I learn from them, and just even being around people. And when you've been around toxic people, no one reads body language like a person that has been surrounded by toxic people most of the time. And you could tell that this is what was on his mind. Like, his agenda was, I want to make a gun arrest so badly. I want to make a gun arrest so badly that six other officers are standing around you, and you're telling all these officers, "Oh, he's a psycho. He's crazy. He applied for the NYPD. He probably didn't get it." And so he goes and tells the cop, he's like, "Oh, Nassau County cops." He's telling them, "Oh, um, yeah, go check the magazine. If he has more than 10 rounds in the magazine, he's fucked." And I'm like, "Well, you're an idiot, Joey. You're an idiot, because first off, no gun store in New York City is gonna allow you to walk out with a 10-round magazine." So that's proof. That's already one way of knowing that I'm not carrying illegally anyway. No gun store is gonna be like, "Okay, well, you're a cool guy. We're gonna let you slide out of here with a 15-round magazine." First off, the Glock that I was carrying was a Glock 30S. It's a 45 caliber Glock, and you can only hold 10 rounds in that magazine. That gun is basically between subcompact and compact. Like the barrel length is like nearly the length of the slide length is like nearly the length of the Glock 19, but the handle is a little bit bigger than the 26. It's between subcompact and compact. All right. And you can only fit 10 rounds in that magazine. So it's like, Joey, what are you talking about? I'm not carrying an extended magazine. I'm carrying the correct magazine. So where do you come from? Where do
You
you
know,
originate from?
Hakeem. I'll tell you straight out. I'll be honest with you. Most cops don't know shit about guns. They carry a gun because they have to, but honestly, most cops really don't know shit about guns. Michael Furia, shout out to you, brother. He says, I'm not surprised. A lot of cops call IB on their own partners every day. You were the only gun collar Joey is ever going to have. I'll tell you straight up. Listen, John and I are huge supporters of the rank and file. But we give a fair assessment. This arrest is stupid. I'm just going to tell you straight out. It's stupid. My teams and we were making arrests for illegal firearms every day in the South Bronx, sometimes 3 in a day. We were getting violent perpetrators with illegal firearms that had nefarious reasons to carry it and nefarious intentions to use it. You were no threat that day. It's obvious. Listen, I got to know you right now, and it's an hour and 20 minutes into this podcast. You've been on for about an hour. I've gotten to know you. I can make my assessment. Clearly, you were no threat. And you were there to support the cops. This is a stupid arrest. It's like the cops sometimes I would have, and I'm sure our active retired guys know about these cases. You get a cop who's never had a gun collar before. He's like, I got a gun collar today. Yeah, what'd you get? Oh, this guy was he was in a car. I did a car stop. He had a gun in his truck. He's got a permit in Pennsylvania or a permit in Georgia. So this guy had no knowledge that he couldn't carry the gun in New York. That's your gun collar? I mean, that's stupid. Just because, but unfortunately, and I will say this, unfortunately, a lot of, the mindset of people in New York, they just don't know too much about the Second Amendment. It's not pro gun in New York. And a lot of times they demonize just guns itself. So this arrest is stupid. I mean, look, you're on a first name basis with this guy, Joey. You know Joey. You're not even calling him Officer, what is his last name? Officer Schmuckatelli. You call him Joey.
Oh, Casal.
Casal. But I mean, you call him Joey. You call him by his first name. I mean, this is stupid.
It was stupid. It was stupid, but you'll be surprised to know how many cops actually don't know the law. Like, for example, where you said that guy, probably has a permit in Pennsylvania or whatever the case is. A lot of people don't know the law, that the federal law permits you that, let's say if you're traveling from Pennsylvania to Vermont and you have to pass through New York and New Jersey, the two most anti-gun states, that federal law permits you to travel through those states, pass through with no uninterrupted trips, pass through those states as long as the gun is in your trunk and it's locked away with the magazine and ammunition separate, that you can transport your gun from one state to the other state, even if you're passing New York City, even if you have to go through New York City. It permits you to do so. There was quite a few cops that I saw at a protest, and they were like, "Oh, you're the guy that got arrested," and they didn't even know that New York City was a concealed carry state now. So it's like I'm looking at it and I'm like, wow. So yeah, you guys would probably arrest somebody with the concealed carry license, probably thinking it's a fake, but you guys have no idea that the state issues, the city, the 5 boroughs issue concealed carry now.
So,
and it just makes no sense to me. It's like, and I don't expect everyone to be perfect and knowledgeable when it comes to the law, because there's so many things about the law. There's new things that you're learning every single day. But my thing is, if you're going to go out there and you're going to make an arrest, that you're going to make a gun arrest or any type of arrest, at least know what you're doing before, because that was ridiculous. That and shit, to be honest, it cost me everything.
So Hakim, so you were arrested. I gotta ask you this question. Please don't be offended by it, but I just have to.
No.
It doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't. Was there any other type of personal relationship that you and Joey were having? Does he have any vendetta to get back at you? Is anything
Listen, I'm not offended.
Was there anything personally going on that?
Not at all.
This was other than you guys interacting while he was on duty. Was there anything else? Were there any other interactions that you believe would cause him to take some type of action like this?
No, had nothing again. You know what's funny is that a couple people joked around with me and they were like, "Yo, Hakeem, what's wrong? What's going on with you? What's going on? Like, did you sleep with his fiance or something? Because he's engaged. I'm pretty sure he might be married by now." They're like, "Oh, did you sleep with his fiance?" I'm like, "No, I don't know anybody like for him. Like, I don't know his mother. I don't know I don't know anyone.
And then
I don't
and
know
then you
anyone for him."
yeah, okay. And then so what ultimately happens with your arrest? Could you just explain to everyone? You explained to me when it happened, and you explained to me again. But could you explain for the audience like how you were support? Oh, did we just lose him? I think we just lost Hakeem.
I think he's trying to take some photos. Something happened over here. I don't know. Listen, by the way, I just think it's an amazing story, right? Here's a cop he knows on a first name basis. Has an affinity for police. He's actually going to his post and taking pictures of him. And, this is a crazy gun arrest to me. I think, first of all, it's just stupid, John. Honestly, it is just stupid. And I agree. I think it was a great question. Like, did something happen for, for Joey? Was there some negative interaction? I feel like something's missing. I feel like there must have been some type of negative interaction to get to this point because they're always having this kind of nice relationship, and all of a sudden he makes the arrest.
So
No,
so
not at all. It really caught me by surprise. Like, I mean, I don't know anyone else. Like, I don't have any other mutual friends with Joey. It's like, as I said, people made jokes before. People said, "Oh, did you sleep with his fiance?" I'm like, first off, I don't even know his fiance. I don't know anyone for him. I know his mother is a retired cop, but I don't know his mother. I don't know anyone in the family. We never had a falling out. We've never had an issue. We've never had an argument. Like every now and then he would come to me and he'd be like, "Oh, you're obsessed with guns and this, that, and the third." But we have never, ever, ever, ever had a falling out. We've never had a negative interaction. Everything was all jokes, laughter, cracking up. So it's like it's like one of those things. But when I saw Joey that morning, he didn't look right. Like 'cause something was off about him when I saw him that day. Like, when you're around somebody and something is off about them and you can look at them like everything like basically shows something is off. That's exactly what Joey, I felt like, honestly speaking, as weird as it sounds, I felt like Joey was a different person that day.
so what ultimately happens with the arrest, Hakeem?
So they so they basically, they put me in the squad car, SWAT team comes, they take me down to the 7th precinct. They sit me in the cell. I'm there for like damn near 3 hours sitting in the cell. I'm starving. Cops were talking to me about it and they thought it was stupid itself. And I came outside. So they brought me outside and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna get fingerprints." So I'm like, "This is an arrest?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's an arrest." And at the time they didn't read me like any Miranda rights at the time. They just fingerprinted me, took my picture and everything. And then afterwards they explained what the arrest was for. And they said criminal possession of a firearm, rifle, or shotgun in a sensitive location. All right. So I did have my second firearm on me that was locked away in the car, that was secured. Um they hit me with the charge of failure to safeguard, but the charges were dropped. They dropped the charges. I guess they realized that we had nothing to charge this guy on.
So the arrest ultimately gets thrown out. Um,
Yeah.
are you currently in litigation? Do you have a lawsuit against the department, against Joey, against like what's going on with that?
All three of them. All three of them. Joey, I'm suing him on a personal and a civil level. MTA police is also being sued, and Nassau County police is being sued. Nassau County was the one who basically took the collar, took the arrest, put me through the system. And Joey, MTA police, he's the one that, put the cuffs on me and everything like that. So everyone's being sued. I'm not letting anyone get away with this.
Have you seen Joey since? And did you and Joey exchange phone numbers? Like, did you guys ever speak on the phone other than just seeing
No,
each other?
I had his number. I had his number. I had his number. He had my personal number. I had his personal number. So he used to call me every now and then. He used to call me to joke around, And there was some weird, like honestly speaking, I don't know, man. As crazy as it sounds, I felt like there was some weird pages online, and I also felt like Joey kind of had like ties to those pages. Like
Like what
there was
pages?
this one, you know, John, all cops are woke. You know,
Well, there were definitely
Nikki
cops talking about
Guns.
it. Well, those were all cops, and NYPD Internal Affairs Department knows exactly who all those people are because we shared with them who they are, who they're friendly with, who knows who they are, and the NYPD Internal Affairs Bureau did absolutely nothing about it.
Yeah. So Joey, I knew Joey had ties to those pages because Joey would tell me, "Oh, unblock Nikki Guns, unblock Stevie Guns," and I'm like, "Who the hell are these people? Like,
We
who
know
the
who.
hell are these people?"
We'll tell you.
You
We'll
know,
tell you.
I heard, you know, I heard some weird things. That I heard that there was another page too as well. I just don't remember the page.
God's work.
Um,
Does that sound familiar?
no, it was like Frenchies. I don't know. The page had like a French bulldog is like the like the icon, but it was some weird pages, and yeah,
Hakeem, this is a great
I
Hakeem, this is a great question. Answer this for us, please, because I'm thinking the same thing.
go ahead.
Patrick Donahue, by the way, you're on fire, brother. Thank you. Please elaborate as to why you think Joey was part of All Cops Are Woke. What were their ties? Because All Cops Are Woke, I'm sure you know, Hakeem. If you don't, John and I both got threatening messages to our kids from the fake moniker All Cops Are Woke, which we know it's a member of the service. We've been completely stonewalled by Internal Affairs for an entire year as far as the identity, and we know, in fact, it is a member of the service or maybe several members of the service behind. So what, I think, Patrick Donahue, you're on fire today, brother. Thank you so much. Great question. Please elaborate as to why you think Joey was part of All Cops Are Woke and what were the ties?
I mean, I just felt like, you know what, he would constantly ask me, like Joey would literally message me, like, and ask me to unblock all cops awoke, unblock Stevie Guns, unblock Nikki Guns, unblock this page, and I'm like, no, why am I doing that?
Hold
You
on right
know?
there. You said Stevie Guns?
Yeah, Stevie
Okay,
Guns. I
yeah.
don't know. Who,
We know Stevie
I don't
Guns
know
has
who
ties
that.
to All Cops Are Woke. Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't know who these pages are, to be honest. I don't know who's running it. I heard different rumors. I heard that All Cops Awoke is not even a cop. He's a security guard that works at Kohl's or something like that. That's what I heard. I heard it's not an MOS, but I found out that I'm hearing that, oh, it's an MOS. He's actually a Sarge in a Manhattan Command. And I'm like, okay, I don't know who these people are. But Joey would constantly reach out to me and ask me to unblock all of these pages, unblock Stevie Guns, unblock Nikki Guns, unblock all cops awoke. I'd block all cops awoke, or I would, you know, and then I would get screenshots from him and like, you know, a few other people in regards to what all cops awoke are saying about me. So I'd unblock all cops awoke, and I'd be like, "Yo, what's your problem?" I don't even know if that page is still up. All I remember was I blocked it for like the final time because I didn't want to have anything to do with it. But that's the reason why I felt like Joey had a connection with them, because he would constantly ask me to block each and every single one of these individuals. He would call me personally and ask me to block them. He would text me and ask me to block them, to unblock them.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. Obviously, that ties. I think that those handles were obsessed with two pages. The finance unfiltered, or us, and then you. They seemed like pretty obsessed with. Definitely people not right in the head. Definitely people that don't deserve to wear badges and guns. And there's a lot of people. There's a lot of social media influencer cops that, unlike them, don't hide behind fake handles, but are heavily associated with those accounts as well. And what happens in the dark will eventually come out in the light. That's neither here nor there for a later time, a later episode. So Hakeem, if you could just bring us back to what you were doing prior to this arrest, as like how you were supporting yourself financially and what the impact of that arrest has had on you, both professionally and financially, emotionally, and if you could just elaborate for the audience on what's happening with you now.
Okay, so John, I know you're gonna probably laugh at this. It's not really funny, but it is funny at the same time. You're gonna laugh at this. You know, whenever you ever heard of a Jamaican having one job,
Never.
like I'm serious.
Never.
Like I don't think I've ever. Yeah, When have you ever heard of a when have
Never,
you ever heard of a Jamaican or any person really from the Caribbean, but mainly a Jamaican having just one job? I
never.
was working at the time. I was working three jobs at the same time. I was working for this company called Malka Amit, which is an armored truck company. We specialized in transporting diamonds, jewelry, precious stones, artwork. Only thing we didn't transport was cash. That was what made us different from um Brinks and Garda and all of these other companies. And so I was working there and I did 9 to 5 p.m. with that company. And after that, I was working for a retired cop named Mike Zotto. I was working for him for his security company, Strategic Protection Group. I worked for his company and I would do overnight. So I'd do like either 9 to 7 a.m. in the morning or 10 or 11 to 8 a.m. And then I'd do that and I'd leave at 8 a.m. in the morning, drive all the way from Chelsea because I would sit in my car at nighttime and watch a building. I would leave from there and go up to 43rd Street, park my car on 43rd Street, or occasionally put it in the garage, and then I would go straight to working for the armored truck company. And then in between that, I would do the job that I'm working for the media outlet Freedom News TV. I would work all three of those jobs, and so I was basically sleepless. My mind was I have to make money. I was actually about to move into an apartment on the at 116th and Park. I was just about to get that. I was saving up really, really good. I felt like I was moving in the right direction, moving in the right path. Like I'm getting my paychecks and I'm just throwing them in my savings account. Like I'm not really spending. Like if I didn't think it was necessary, I wouldn't buy it. And this is coming from someone who loves sneakers, by the way, who's a sneakerhead. But I was working both those jobs, and both those jobs required for me to have a security license. When that happened, my security license got suspended a short time, like within a short time after, because remember, once these charges take place, it gets reported to the state. So it got reported to the state, and I'm at the armored truck job, and I'm at Malcolm Meet that morning. And so I'm working with, there's a whole bunch of retired detectives that work there, retired cops. So I'm working with one of the retired cops, and all of a sudden, Segal, the manager, she calls me into the office. She's like, Hakeem, by the way, I need to talk to you. And this is a very nice company, by the way. The best job I've ever had, one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. And so Segal calls me into the office, and I was like, I know Segal. She's like, oh, you do? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, yeah, unfortunately, like, we don't want to do this, but we have to do this because if your security license is suspended. If we don't suspend you, we're gonna face fines for even having you. So I said to her, I was like, listen, since I'm here and it's basically like 12 already or nearly 12, can I just finish off the day and get like a full day's worth of pay? She's like, unfortunately, we can't have you on the property. So my license was suspended. I've been out of that company basically forever, and they recently like basically terminated my employment. They said they don't consider it a termination. They just basically listed it as me resigning so it wouldn't affect me in a negative way. But they listed it as they took me out of the system. I had TSA clearance from there because we couldn't touch these packages. I wasn't allowed to sign for the packages unless I had TSA clearance. I had the TSA clearance, and they took me out of the system, and they said, listen, I asked them, I was like, can you bring me back? Because the state screwed up, and the state sat on the paperwork. I did the training did the training. I did the requalification courses for them, and they said, oh, we didn't get the training. And then they sent me a letter saying that we didn't get the training. The state screwed up. And when I called them last week, they said, oh, we have everything. Now we're going to process your license. So now it's too late for me to go back to the company. This company said, we're not going to bother taking you back because if we do, you're going to be a new hire. And I'm like, great. Like, this is exactly what I need. And the other company, Strategic, there's actually even no work available at this time. And I had to leave from that company because my security license was suspended, and he does get audited as well. So if I worked there and they find out that he has me on the clock, he has me on the books, and I don't have a security guard license, his company can get screwed up. So yeah, I'm down to this one freelance job that I have, and I'll do like photography gigs here and there. I went back to my old job, but it was seasonal. It was a family-owned business in Brooklyn. It was a seasonal position for me, but I went there, made as much money as I could. But right now, I'm just doing this freelance job. I'm trying to go back to another old job that I worked at before. I'm trying to look for jobs and everything. But in terms of asking me how this affected me negatively, it did affect me negatively. I don't care what anybody wants to say. People don't realize this, and it doesn't. And I know not. I know that not all cops are the same, but it, what people fail to realize is, and especially Joey failed to realize that regardless of what the outcome is, yeah, the charges have been dropped. It is still a stain. It's still a stain. I still have to explain this to agencies. I have to explain this to agencies. I went all the way out to Pennsylvania like a couple months ago. All right. I did the process. I did the background paperwork. I did this. I did that. The only thing that was left for me to do was my medical, my sick, and my agility. And they looked at me, they sent me a letter, they gave me a call saying that we're withdrawing your application. We're basically taking out your application. Oh, why? We see something on we see that basically you had an arrest. And I'm like, really? You didn't even ask? Like, I listed it down. I listed it down on paper. I listed it. I wrote and I explained every single thing that happened. It's not like I hid it from you and didn't disclose it with you. I did. And when I had the interview, they liked what they saw. So I thought I was going to get hired. I really thought that I was going to get hired. They didn't say a word to me. All right. They didn't ask me what happened. They didn't ask me what. If they had asked me what was the arrest about, I would have gladly told them and I would have told them what happened, but they did not ask me what the arrest was about. So they didn't ask me what the arrest was about. I thought it was cool. I didn't say anything because I was like, listen, if they don't ask you in an interview, you don't say anything. And they didn't ask me, but I listed it down on paper so they know. And so at the end of the day, people don't realize it's a stain. Like you going for any type of job. Like even retail jobs nowadays, they're doing background checks. They'll ask you on like a couple years ago, no, this was like 2015. I was trying to get a job at Best Buy. You had to take a piss test and they ask you, have you been charged with a felony? Have you ever been arrested? Have you ever been this? So just imagine like trying to really get a good job, all right? Even if it's not in the field of law enforcement, and then now having to explain, okay, well, you've been arrested. Why? Firearm related arrest. Tell me, does that look good in any way, shape, or form? And as much as I don't like to put race into anything, I hate putting race into everything. Everyone knows I'm conservative, I'm Republican. I don't play that race card. But really, as a dark skinned guy with dreadlocks, being arrested for a firearm, does that look good or appealing for any law enforcement agencies? Like in general, just getting arrested for something firearm related, does that look appealing to any law enforcement agencies? Does that look appealing if you were trying to apply for Secret Service, diplomatic security services, Homeland Security, um, Air Marshal, U.S. Marshals? Does that look good in any way, shape, or form that you've been arrested for a firearm?
I mean, clearly we talk about that, right? An arrest. There's a dichotomy between arrest and conviction, but of course, arrest does leave a stain for you. So, with that being said, you're out there. You got your social media page, Perception Management. You talked about the impact that it had on the community, and that you received opposition from BLM and other anti-police advocates. So, after this arrest, did they reach out to you at all? Did BLM or any of these anti-police advocates actually reach out to you and try to create a relationship?
No, a few of them, not to really create a bond. Quite a few of them like reached out to laugh, to be like, yeah, this is what you get for supporting the cops. This is what you get for supporting them. I told you they weren't your friends. I told you that, this is the type of people that they are. That's what I got from them. They didn't reach out to create a bond and say, oh, like, we got you. No, they didn't reach out for that. They reached out to basically laugh and say, that's what you get for supporting cops.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it's a shame, bro. I mean, because honestly, I don't want to say that's what you get for supporting cops, but I see why people can't stand cops, and I see how just a very small minority of cops who act inappropriately um really have the ability to show what just to paint the entire profession in a bad light and give a voice to people like that are going to say, oh, you should, you shouldn't be friendly with cops. But I'm glad you're smart enough and you're wise enough to see that, you hold people accountable as individuals, not as part of a whole profession, right?
Yeah,
We
100%.
we often talk about that. So like you said, the case is sealed. You're in litigation now. I put links. I found a GoFundMe page that that you have, and I know you're like trying to right the ship. You're looking for employment. You're having a hard time with money. So I posted the link to Hakim's GoFundMe page on the YouTube, on the Apple, and all that stuff. So if you guys, have it in your heart, to help Hakim out during this time, we appreciate it. Hakim, how are you? Are you still going to pursue a career in law enforcement? Are you still looking to do it? And my other question for you is if Police Commissioner Tish was listening to this now and she offered you a job as a civilian member to work in the photography department of the NYPD, is that something that you would do?
I would do it. Listen, I would do it. I wouldn't say no to it. Am I looking for law enforcement? Yes and no. It's such a bit of a gray area because, as I said, this stain. It's like, I'm just tired of feeling like I'm wasting my time. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go everywhere, and I'm gonna put in for these places. And they're gonna look this, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good. What? Okay, okay, what's this, firearm arrest? Oh, absolutely no, bye. And that's what they're gonna do, and I feel like that's gonna continue happening to me. It's like, even no matter how much I explain it to anyone, they're gonna look at me like I'm some kind of perp, like I'm some kind of, and it's crazy because it's like, I just don't see it. Like, I don't see how you arrest somebody for literally having a permit. Like, and the thing that pisses me off is, so you arrest somebody that has a permit, but look at all these illegals, all right, that are bound to get rounded up by ICE. But look at all of these illegals that are walking around Roosevelt Avenue, all right. I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, these guys are packing, all right. But Joey, I don't think Joey would have ever approached them. But in terms, to get back with your question and not to get off track, it's a yes and no for me. Like, listen, if there were law enforcement agencies like in Florida and all these other places that were watching this right now, and they offered me a position and they said, hey, well, we need cops or we need CEOs in our department, would you like to apply? I would take it in a heartbeat. Like, if Tish was offering me a civilian position, I would take it. If another agency was watching this and offered me a position as a law enforcement officer, I would take it. But it's kind of a yes and no, because it's like, I don't want to feel like I'm wasting my time applying for places, and places are going to probably continuously shut me out. Almost like a
Hakeem,
permanent bar from ever getting into law enforcement.
Hakeem, one of our friends of the podcast here, Ron Layson, he was a former executive of the NYPD. He was actually the CEO from 2016 to 2018 of the Candidate Assessment Division. So he says here, if you are still interested in becoming NYPD, you need to take the exam again. They shouldn't hold this arrest against you now that it has been expunged. And if they do, you have a legit appeal. So this is great. This has come from the horse's mouth. He was actually the CEO from 2016 to 2018.
Yeah, here's the thing. I have something to tell you.
Okay, please do tell.
Hello?
We want forthcoming honesty and transparency.
Okay, so I'm gonna be honest with you. The reason why I said I would never take the test again was because I took it. I took it one time already. They sent me a DQ in 2021. They sent me a DQ in 2021, and that was after the incident when my car was surrounded by those protesters. Everyone remembers that my car was surrounded by the protesters. I floored it and I got out. They held that against me.
Why don't you
even
go
though
into
it was
that?
dropped.
Why don't you go into that real quick? What happened with that arrest? Just real quick. I'm
Okay.
familiar with it. But a lot of
I'm
people
not gonna
may
take.
not be.
Okay, so long story short is I go to a protest that day. I know everyone tells me I shouldn't have been there, but long story short, I wasn't even. I was just there as a photographer, and there were 3 friends of mine, along with two other people that were being attacked by BLM protesters. I was furious with them because I'm like, you know that these BLM protesters are ruthless. You know that you're five of you guys. How are you going to outnumber 300 people? All right. And so they're being attacked and being chased. And I said to the deputy inspector, Nikas, at the time, Nikas tells me, I said, Nikas, I have my car. My car has tinted windows. No one will ever see them. I'll get them out to safety. All right. Oh, he said, okay, well, we'll reverse you out and we'll reverse you out and you just go up 8th Avenue. So I was like, okay, I'll just go up 8th Avenue and then swing back around and drop them off at 34th. Long story short, I put them in my car, go down to the end of the block because the protesters, SRG had to come and surround the car and block the car from the protesters. And the protesters were trying to attack from behind. So drove further down. Protesters came into the middle of the street. One of the guys on bikes bangs on my driver's side window. You hear them trying to pull open the doors and everything like that. So I push forward a little bit, hit the horn, push forward, hit the horn, push forward, hit the horn, and basically they refused to move. So I push forward even more, and then I push forward again, and they all spread. They all spread like cockroaches. And I made the right and I got out of there. No one got hit. No one flew onto the hood. My windshield wasn't cracked. No one got hurt. All right. And the city of New York, I thought this was a done deal. My lawyer calls me in February of 2021, says that you have to surrender yourself in March. They were originally trying to hit you with the felony, but I got it pleaded down to a misdemeanor. And so long story short, by I think, yeah, 2021, that misdemeanor was reduced down to a violation of $120 and it was paid off, and that was it from there. But I took the PD test in 2020. I took the PD test actually in 2018, and I went through the process, and they sent me a DQ by 2021. Now the reason why I took it a second time was because Margie told me to take it again. Margie was like, take the test again, and I'm like, Margie, I don't want to take the test again. Like, it's not that it's nothing against you guys, but what's the point of taking it if I'm gonna get a DQ? And he reassured me that everything is gonna be good, that I should take the test again. I took the test again, but nothing ever came out of it. And on top of that, they DQ'd me shortly after the incident.
All right. So I mean, listen, the thing is this. So you did have that one arrest. What was the outcome, like the official outcome of that arrest, and what was the official outcome of the arrest for the firearm? Like, what was it officially? Charges dropped, case dismissed. Like, what were both of those, and are those your only times you've been arrested?
Yes, those are the only times I've been arrested. So for that, the incident with the protesters, that was reduced to a violation. They just gave me a discount.
Okay, so you have a violation on your record. That's it. Which is an ACD, which is you don't have a record. Which is ultimately what happened to me. I was arrested twice prior to going on the job. For those of you that don't know, and I was still able to become a police officer. So I'm just like, So I mean, and we're not. If it's something you want to do, you should pursue it further. If it's something that you feel you want to move on, you could. I still believe you could work for the department in many different functions. You seem to have a passion for law enforcement, and whether it be uniformed or civilian, I think it's something that you should pursue further.
Yeah,
I would love
Hakim,
to do uniformed. I would love to be on this job, but the only way I can see myself ever taking the test for a third time and going through that rigorous process is if I know that there's a guarantee that someone is going to make sure that I get on this job. But other than that, I just don't want to be constantly putting in and wasting my time. I'm going here, I'm getting these documents, I'm reaching out to dead relatives over the phone that are probably in the Jackie Robinson Cemetery, asking them, "Oh, when did you live at my house?" Like reaching out. I'm telling you, the NYPD process is something else. Like the NYPD process will have you calling dead relatives that has been dead since 1995 just to get information. Just to get
Hakim,
information.
Hakeem, there's no guarantees in life, but I do agree. Turn something bad into something good, and from getting to know you and your experience, I think that you would make more of an impact with the police department if you could get in contact with them, or even the unions, and find out if there's a way that you could be paid for exactly what you're doing, for putting these photos out, for bringing up morale and bringing up camaraderie through this perception of law enforcement. I think you do far more good. You don't have to carry a gun and be an actual police officer with your boots on the ground to do some good. I see this as a better avenue and a better path for you. And I think, I'm not a religious person, and John always talks about religion, but I do believe in God, and I think God has put you on this path, just as He put John and I on this path in retirement. But I think that's the way for you to go.
No, I can agree with that. I can agree with that. I believe in God too as well. As I said, I grew like I believe in God, and I do believe that God, everything happens for a reason. I believe in God's timing. I believe that everything that you are praying on and hoping for. Sometimes we don't get it right away, or we don't get it at all. But God knows the reason as to why. But yeah, I mean, I always loved it. As I said, it's a gray area as to whether I would do it. If I was offered a position, I would definitely take it 100%. If I was offered the position, but at this, it's a gray area when it comes to you know to law enforcement. This thing cost me a lot, and to be honest, like I don't know, man. I'm my guns are gonna probably end up getting destroyed because they're still in the property room in Long Island. All right, and I don't even understand why the city would even go through that test. The charges were dropped. Why revoke the permit?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not anything I can
Like, why
answer.
revoke the permit? Like,
Yeah,
they dropped the charges and they still revoked the permit.
listen, it's not anything I can answer, but I could tell you that for sure the NYPD licensing division is a complete disaster. So, and like every other part of the NYPD now, that like all the investigators that are probably working for the NYPD for the licensing division are probably standing on a train post 5 days a week, and it's being done kind of intentionally, in my opinion. I believe there's a lot of incompetence in NYPD management and how that office in particular is being run, and it's partly due to weak leadership and inept leadership, and it's also being done to not be forthcoming with actually allowing people the right, their Second Amendment right. People are applying at a rate we've never seen in New York City before to get firearms, because the way that the NYPD in New York City were operating was directly against the Second Amendment. And so you're going to have a big problem with that office. I think anybody, even if you didn't have arrest, is going to have a problem with that office. Retired cops are having problems with that office. Everybody's having a problem with that office. It's being done intentionally. That's my opinion on it. So, all right, listen, we had you on here almost 2 hours. We appreciate you for joining us. Before you go, could you just give us a little message to your haters, and and then I'm sure Eric will ask you something before we let you go. Like, you have any message? You have a lot of haters like us. I personally, I got to tell you, I saw a post that you put out yesterday. It seemed like you were bothered about the post and what people were saying about you. I personally, I take it the other way. When I put out a post and I get so much hate on it, I take it as a huge blessing, that we have the ability to have conversations like this, and we open up dialogue. And Eric often says opposition meets opportunity. And I give no credit to anyone who hides behind a fake picture and a fake handle. Those people aren't even real to me. So I suggest you do the same. I've been telling everyone since I got out of here on social media, I normally post and ghost. If I'm bored and I scroll, or I just happen to catch something, sometimes I'll respond, but I do not let that affect my day. There's nothing that could be said to me online, especially by people who don't have the balls enough to do it using their own name and their own photo, that's gonna ever change my mood or anything like that. And I suggest you do. But what's the message to your haters?
No, it's like yeah. So It's not. I wouldn't say necessarily it is a message, but like seriously, the way how I see it is, if you can't say it to somebody's face, then don't hide behind a keyboard and do it. Like a lot of you out there, like, and it's crazy because like you'd expect this from, you know, it's funny as, and I'm being real with you, you'd expect this type of behavior from people like Antifa. I would expect that type of behavior from Antifa. I would expect it from BLM, but I wouldn't expect it from people who are second grade detectives, third grade detectives. You know, I wouldn't expect it from people like that. That's the crazy thing, is like seeing the type of behavior. And if you can't say it to someone's face, then don't sit behind the keyboard and say it. And so for some of you out there who calling me buff, I use the radio for work purposes. Like you think I'm using it to just show up at crime scenes, or you think I'm using it to pull people over? You think I'm doing stuff like that? It's funny because I've realized that even quite a few of you out there, you know, I'm not saying any names, but you know exactly who you are because I've confronted you on your inbox, and a lot of you, it's so funny because you call me an EDP, you can't give me a reason as to why you're calling me an EDP. But the moment I confront you about it, you get upset and you're like, oh, fuck off, and then you block me and stuff like that. All right, you're calling me an EDP, right? I know plenty of EDPs I've seen, like, you know, I've known plenty of EDPs. I know plenty of EDPs that wear the blue police pants with the blue police boots, and you would have thought that they were just signing out of the command and going home. You would think that they're just coming in to start their tour. They're wearing the blue police pants and the blue police boots and everything like that. They have the portable walking around and shit like that. And I've seen a few of those. I've seen a few actual buffs that no one pays attention to get on the job. And then you're out here calling me an EDP. When do you see me out here making, you know, impersonating cops and, you know, impersonating police, making traffic stops? Like, really? Like, I've seen actual buffs that were driving in fucking unmarked cars, all right, in Staten Island, driving around, pulling people over, to the point where actually one day I'm at my boy's garage because I had to get my car done, and public safety pulls up saying, "Hey, do you ever seen a a silver Taurus driving around?" And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And apparently, yeah, it's a guy that is a buff and he's driving around, full light package, full sirens, pulling people over. And those are buffs that get on, if not New York, they get on in some other state. They go down south, they go somewhere, and then they get on the job. So you're calling me an EDP, you're calling me a buff, and you're calling me all of that, but you don't see me doing anything. Like, I'm inside my room right now. You see nothing police related in my room. You see nothing police related in my room. Now, if you want to talk about like 150th scale replicas, I have plenty of that like in my room right now. But you don't see anything thin blue line related in my room. You don't see a thin blue line artwork or sticker or anything. You won't see that in my room. Like, you would come into my room and see 150th scale replicas of cranes and everything like that are museum quality replicas, and you'd see that and you'd never think that this person is into law enforcement. You wouldn't think so. You don't see anything police related in my room. So kindly explain to me, how am I an EDP? How am I obsessed? And how am I buff? Just kindly explain it to me.
You know,
You know.
Hakeem,
So
I can tell you
for
this.
those,
Hakeem, I can tell you this. I live by this. I live by this gnomon, and I believe that what other people think of you is none of your business. And what I mean by that is, who cares? I mean, that's why I own the moniker Most Complaint Cop, because there's a lot of people who have no idea who I am, and they have their assessment, and they make their judgment on me based on that of my career and who I am. And I could care less. I could care less because I know who I am, so I don't care. You're always going to have haters, no matter how high you are. You're going to have haters, and no matter how low you are, you'll have haters in life. So the bottom line is, all that matters is what you think of yourself. But I can tell you what's the most important thing by this? Not only a GoFundMe page, but we're building a network here. We have friends and listeners on this podcast right now in this chat that want to help you. Ron Layson, who was a former worked in candidate assessment. He says he was the XO. I thought he was a CO. I thought he was the CO, Ron. But anyway, the point is, he wants to help you. He's willing to get on the phone with you if you still want to pursue a career in law enforcement. I have to agree with Marlon. Marlon says they probably did you a favor. I think they did you a favor. I think it would be much better suited to be doing your perception of law enforcement, have your photographs, and have much better of an impact on the NYP than other law enforcement agencies in New York City through your photographs. I think you're telling a story through it. I think they did you a favor. But we have a network here of people that want to help you. There's people that feel that what happened to you is absolutely ridiculous. I don't care that you were arrested for this discount. So what? So was John. So was many other people. It happens. You know what? I was a mischievous kid too. I got lucky. I didn't get arrested. I wasn't a bad kid, but I did stupid things too. We all did. We were all kids. We all make mistakes. But the bottom line is, I think that really, we're building a network here. There's people that want to hear you. There's people that want to help you. Amazing Answers. Reach out to Serena Townsend. Serena Townsend, she's a great lawyer. She was on this podcast. So that ultimately, what I'm getting at of this is we built a network that we can really help each other out. And that's what the messaging is. Whether if you want to still be a cop, I support you. But the bottom line is, what these people think about you, you don't have to justify it to them. You don't have to explain to them. It doesn't matter. It's what you think yourself. That's because no matter what, you're going to get hate. I don't care. I love the haters on this podcast because you know what? They're still watching. That's the bottom line. They're going to say what they want about me, but they don't say it to my face. They don't worry about it. That's the main thing. So listen, I just want to say you're close to 2 hours on an interview here. I really appreciate you taking your time out. I hope this all works out for you, and I hope that you can see the good in this. And there is some good in this, and the good is that you learned that you know what, there are law enforcement's amazing, and unfortunately, there's people that make mistakes too. So through that should be part of your messaging. Say, hey, here's a good law enforcement officer. Here's what I learned, and the value in that. So, you know what? It's a bump, it's an obstacle, but you can turn this into something good.
Yeah, and for the people out there.
Go ahead, Hakim.
No, I was saying, as for the people out there that are reaching out to help, I'm John. If you want, you can give them my personal number. They don't have to reach out through Instagram. You can give them my personal number, tell them to give me a call. My phone, I make my phone available at all times. You can give me a call right away. You can give me a call anytime you want. I'll be at New York Presbyterian. I have a doctor's appointment soon. I have to actually get ready to head out. I'm debating on whether I should drive, I should take the train. But yeah, I just give them my personal phone number, give them my personal phone number. I have another phone too. I have another active phone. I'll give you that number. You can give out to them. I'd love to speak to anyone who's willing to help. And as I said, my GoFundMe is directly on my Instagram for anyone who follows. And I believe YouTube put it at the bottom of the page. If you like to share it out, if anyone would like to donate, this is gonna help. This is basically helping towards. It's not helping me necessarily for myself and things that I need. It's helping me to pay off the lawyer. So if there's any amount that you'd like to donate, there's no specific amount. Any amount is great. Any amount is greatly appreciated. I am grateful for anything. Literally, if it's simply $1, I am grateful for everything. So thank you guys so much for the ones who are out there supporting. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Hey, Hakim, last question, because this is important. When I was in Iraq, I had a lot of Jamaican dudes in my unit, and they all kicked my ass in dominoes. Do you play dominoes?
I play dominoes, but it's funny. Not frequently, not frequently, not an everyday thing. But I'm pretty sure when you played dominoes with your Jamaican friends, they slammed that shit on the table, didn't they? They slammed it on the table, didn't they?
Bomb clock.
Because it's a common yeah, it's a common thing. Yeah, it's a common thing. Yeah, that does take place. It's funny because I have cousins that live right next door. I have relatives that live right next door. And so they jerk chicken every Friday. All right. And they'll play dominoes, especially in the summertime when it's it's 80 degrees outside at nighttime. Yeah. And they're playing dominoes. And I'll be in my room and the window's slightly open and you can hear you can hear it. You can hear the dominoes slapping against the table. But yeah, it's true. Yeah, we do play dominoes, and oftentimes we will break the table depending on the strength of the table. But yeah, it's
all right.
common.
All right, Hakim. Well, listen, we'll be following along. We wish you luck and everything. We'll be checking out your page. Go over to Perception of Law Enforcement page to follow Hakim Gibson. Hakim, thank you for joining us today, and we'll follow along. If there's any updates in your case, please let us know. We'll have you back on and come explain it. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Take care, sir. See you, brother.
Yeah. Bye. Yeah.
All right. So that was a good interview. Listen, and I see a lot of you guys in the comments saying things. I can't get over the incident. I think the incident could there be more to the story behind the scenes between him and Joey? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's more stuff that makes it worse. It makes it you making your actions being personally involved. I think ultimately the fact that they dropped all the charges is It's a no-brainer. I think he wins his lawsuit. Like it's not even a thing. And again, I think it was an overstep. I think that we could make mistakes as law enforcement officers, but it seemed to be more of intentional than a mistake, in my opinion.
It opens up a lot of questions, John. Like the other cops that at the funeral, what were they saying? The leadership, like what supervisor actually signed off and authorized that arrest? I mean, it's just the whole thing's stupid. I mean, honestly, they all know him. This is not a stranger. This is not a guy on a gang database. He's not a perpetrator with a past. He's not a person of interest. Why is this guy being arrested? And that's what I used to say. It's like, it's unfortunate, but I think that we really demonize guns in New York, and a lot of cops just don't understand guns, and they don't understand, and unfortunately, John, you probably saw it yourself. I would work with cops and right, oh my God, the guy has a gun. I'm like, well, you know what? This guy had a permit. There are people that have permits. There are people that carry guns, and this is just a stupid arrest. And that's why I say, where was the leadership in this? Where was the sergeant to be like, this is stupid, right, John? I mean, we're making this arrest.
They were busy hitting on people's wives at the funeral. That's what they were doing. That's what they were doing. It's a absolute joke. I agree with you. Yeah, there was absolutely no one to step in there. And I think the crazier part of it is like the part that really gets me is he was standing there talking to the lieutenant. And the lieutenant's like, Hakim, get me those photos of the dogs because I want to put them up, or he wants to put them up in the office or whatever. So you're standing there talking to law enforcement who doesn't deem you a threat, a lieutenant, and like, where was he to step in? You're gonna just let this wacko come out of nowhere and start making like, what the hell's going on? I would have put Joey right in his place. Like, you get, like, you're right. You feeling okay today? Did you off your meds today? You on any medication? Like, step back. We'll deal with this. Is there a problem yet? Like, and I think that, that K9 lieutenant, if you're listening to this, I honestly blame you. Where the hell were you? It's absolute, it's cowardice in my opinion. I think, often in law enforcement, a lot of people love me in the NYPD, but there's guys that don't like me because I'll say what the hell I'm thinking at the moment I'm thinking it. And I'm not afraid to do it. And it should have been done there. And it was a complete overstep. And you're right. There was no leadership there whatsoever. Just think about that, dude. You're a lieutenant there, and this MTA cop comes running up. And I got no problem with MTA cops. I know a lot of MTA cops. I know a lot of guys that switched over from the NYPD, went to the MTA. I got no problem with any other law enforcement agency, but you're going to overstep my authority right there. If you didn't see a problem, you saw a problem, you're not going to whisper it to me. You're just going to come over and start, and take excess authority over not only Hakim, but me as well. And I think that's a big problem. I do.
Listen, we're pretty tolerable. Like I said, we don't mind haters, but Hood Mayor, you're really trying to disrupt the comments today. You're a little off the wall. You don't even make sense half the time, and you're hiding behind a fake moniker. I can't even understand what this guy is trying to make out here. Half the times he doesn't make any sense. Can you put a sentence together, please? Anyway, the bottom line is this was a stupid arrest. I really think that doesn't matter. People are really prejudging him, calling him emotionally disturbed and saying he's a buff, this and that. So what if he's a buff? Don't you? You know what? We should actually like people that are buffs, that actually like law enforcement, actually want to put you in a positive light. There's nothing wrong with someone admiring law enforcement and liking what the guys do and not necessarily being a cop. I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, you should want people to have an affinity for you. But, that's unfortunately overwhelming majority of cops are negative. If people show them favoritism, this person's a buff. If they don't like them, you know what? This person's an asshole. So can we find some fine line in the middle? Listen, I feel sorry what happened to him. I think there is, I have to be honest, I think there's some stuff in this story with Joey that's missing, but I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Whatever interaction they had, he was no impact. He was no threat that day. So what? He has a gun. It's in a holster. He's got a permit for it. To me, it seems like he was a little excited by it. He had just gotten his permit. To me, it's implied that when he went to One Police Plaza, he got his permit, and then he went to the funeral with the firearm. I don't know. Listen, John, I'm just making an assessment here. Maybe it was showing. Maybe he wanted to kind of show off to the cops that he has a gun also. That could be. I don't know. We didn't really go into it. This is just observations I'm making. I don't know what's going on in his head. But either way, it doesn't matter. This is this arrest should have never been made. This is not an arrest where you saved lives on this day. You didn't make an impact with some violent perpetrator or someone that was a threat to the community. That's why I say it's not necessarily what the arrest is. Yeah. It's what the impact has.
I just honestly, I just think, like cops are so dumb, and they don't put two, like they have a hard stance on one issue, and then they don't say anything about the same issue elsewhere. And it's like, this kid's kind of out there where he's like, he's in the public eye because he's on social media. So everybody, it's easy to judge. But there's a cop, and you know him, and I'm not going to blow him up, but you guys know who it is. And Eric, you know him too. And I had already left the 120 precinct, and I started studying for the lieutenant's exam, and I go to whatever church it was. Maybe it was like St. Dominic's or St. A's on Bay Parkway. Forget what church it was, but I'm in the church, and because I'm going to the study class, and I see all the 120 guys, and they're like, "Yo, McCary, come sit here, come sit with us." So I sit down, and they're like, "Oh, do you know XYZ?" And the cop's sitting right there, and I'm like, "No." They're like, "Yeah, he got abducted by aliens because he's missing 5 minutes of his life." And so I'm like, "You're missing 5 minutes of your life?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, I'm missing months." I was like, "Listen, I'm going to pass this test. See you guys later." I get up from the table and I go sit to the other side. And I'm like, "What the hell was that?" So I make sergeant. A good friend of mine makes sergeant. He goes to the command where that officer works. Officer wasn't feeling well that day. Same officer that's missing 5 minutes of his life. And he goes to the command where he works, and when he comes in, the lieutenant tells him, "Oh, Sarge, one of the your cop, the guy who's missing 5 minutes of life, is in the hospital. He wasn't feeling well. I sent him to the hospital. You got to do a check on him." So the sergeant goes there, checks on him. The kid is walking around in a hospital nightgown with his ass hanging out, walking all over the hospital floor. Doctor comes up to my friend who's the sergeant and goes, "Listen, I'm not telling you how to do your job, but you guys got to keep this guy handcuffed and to the bed. Like, we can't have emotionally disturbed people walking around the hospital interfering with the hospital." So the doctor goes, so the sergeant goes to the doctor, "Well, he's actually a cop." And the doctor's like, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "He's actually a cop that doesn't feel well, and he's in the hospital." And so the doctor was like, "Yeah, no, that can't be right. I need to talk to the medical district." And so basically, long story short, medical district makes a few moves, but today the person's still a cop, missing 5 minutes of his life, abducted by aliens, totally off. And nobody has an issue with that one. But but everybody else, you're an EDP, Eric, I'm an EDP, Hakim's an EDP. It's like nobody else is an EDP. And it's to me, like, things like that are like a lot of like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like the way people look at things and how they approach things, it's almost like once you're in the department, you're good as long as you're in the department. But the minute you leave the department, that's it. You're terrible. Everybody's horrible. And that's how it appears to me. Like, the minute you leave the NYPD, like, when you're in the NYPD, you're protected. You could be doing on-duty booty. You could be robbing drug dealers. You could be doing anything you want to do, and all that's fine because you're on the job. But the minute you leave or you're not in it, you're a perp or you're an EDP.
I think it's a great assessment. I think you're right. I think that, ultimately when it comes to Hakim in this arrest, I just hope that he doesn't have some negative aspirations now towards law enforcement, because he clearly has such an affinity, which is why he has such a passion taking these pictures. But really, it's a stupid arrest. And he brought up bail reform, so I think it was quite interesting to talk about. Is he brought up bail reform? So sometimes I get it, right? I'm not a lefty, not a Democrat, but I can get it why sometimes there is this hatred towards law enforcement, and because there are some police that do things stupidly. I don't think Joey's corrupt. I don't know anything about him, but I think he acted stupidly that day in the sense like, this doesn't have to be an arrest. And if there wasn't bail reform, arguably Hakim could have been sitting in a cell for a period of time when really he shouldn't have been. He should never have been arrested. So that's why I always say everything comes down to leadership, John. Leadership is the most valuable tool and key element of an organization, or any organization, but especially law enforcement. Because where was the leadership that day to say, hey, Hakim has a page of perception of law enforcement. He supports law enforcement. He's not a threat to us. He's a friend to us. Why is he being arrested? and he has a permit. It's legal. So, again, so that's why I can understand sometimes why some of these lefties, are so adamant to push things so far on the other side because of things like this.
Yeah, I agree. So, listen, I think that's it for today. 2 hours, 20 minutes. Got about 900 people on here. Appreciate everybody for joining this morning. Yeah, listen, more importantly, wanted this interview. I think what we did, it was highlight the incident and highlight Hakim, highlight his page. And, I'm going to continue to follow Perception of Law Enforcement. I hope he continues with his work. I think that the pictures are amazing. I think that he is overall a morale booster. And, it saddens me to see how someone who supports cops is treated like by cops. It saddens me to see, because if you're treating a person that supports you, maybe you don't agree with everything. Maybe you don't, you're not particularly trustworthy of people that are smiling in your face and taking photos of you. And I completely understand that because I'm the same way. But to see how you treat someone that is trying to do something good, it's sad to watch. It really is. It's sad to watch because then how do you treat everybody? How do you have relationships? So shout out to Hakim Gibson. I'm glad we had him on. Eric, why don't you close us out, brother?
You know what, John? You shouldn't be shocked by this because look how we've been treated. 2 retired lieutenants. We had exemplary records, within the police department. We both had the top evaluations, 5, and we made a complaint to Internal Affairs over a year ago now about potential corruption and that our First Amendment speech has been attempted to be suppressed, trying to shut down our business, trying to shut down our podcast, and we served within the police department. So it's no shocker that they would treat Hakim in the same manner, or it's no shock to me, and I'm sure it's no shock to you. So shout out to Mr. Glock 54, $9.99 coffee and donuts. You'd think him obtaining a permit would make the cops happy. Finally, someone beat the odds. New York cops are some of the worst. Listen, I have to push back and say New York cops are some of the worst. I think New York cops are some of the best. It's just, unfortunately, New York cops are so iconic that when something negative happens, there's so much emphasis and criticism put on that particular case. Joey, I think, made a complete idiot, stupid mistake. I don't think this arrest should have been made, but that doesn't speak for the entire New York police departments. It doesn't speak for the MTA. It doesn't speak for Nassau County. It surely doesn't speak for the NYPD. So I understand what you're saying, but he did beat the system. He got a permit. He should never have been arrested. I think ultimately what this comes down to is we need effective leadership. And that's what we've been talking about. We're always critical of leadership, right, John? So we need effective leadership. If there was effective leadership, that arrest would not have been made that day. There would have been a conversation with the sergeant to Joey. Say, Joey, we're not making this arrest today, and we'll talk later. But with that being said, thank you so much, Patrick Donahue, Ron Layson, Amazing Ant, Crazy 10-7, friends and listeners on this podcast, and even you, Hood Mayor. I don't take it personally. You can keep trolling us, but you're still a fan. You're still watching. But listen, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. A lot of good input today. There's people that want to help, and that's what this is about. We are building a network. We're building this together. So, John, thank you so much, brother. See you tomorrow, 8:05 Live.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.